I'm not a big crier. Don't get me wrong, I want to cry. I think the biggest mark of quality of a piece of media is if it can make you cry or not. And I've tried hard to get those tear ducts flowing at sad scenes in media, and even some games, but I just can't. I don't cry much in my personal life either. Not because I'm on some alpha male men don't cry mindset. Again, I want to cry, but there's always just something stopping me. I can never bring myself to cry. And so I just thought I was immune to a piece of media or anything for that matter to be able to make me cry, no matter how sad or emotional what I was experiencing was. That was until I played a game that made me bawl my eyes out, and it really changed me. So in this video essay, I'll be going over 3 incredible games that somehow managed to make me cry, explaining how they do it and also my personal story with these games and how they managed to change my life. This is probably the most open I'll ever be in a video, and this video has ended up being really emotional too, so make sure to stick around to the end as you might just learn a thing or two about yourself by the end of this, just like I did. Anyway, relax and get ready for 3 games that make you cry. Also, spoiler warning for Spiritfarer, OMORI and Before Your Eyes, as those are all of the games I'll be covering in this video. Also, some of these games cover some pretty dark stuff, especially OMORI, so just be warned. I'm pretty scared of death, and luckily Spiritfarer is a game about death, more specifically the build up to and aftermath of death. And I think based on just that alone you can see why this game is so emotional. Spiritfarer is a really special game for me, and whilst it didn't make me cry as much as Before Your Eyes did, this game still really changed me after playing, and so hopefully here I can share just how much this game means to me, as I've wanted to make a video on this game for a long time. I actually wrote a script for it 2 years ago, but it didn't really go anywhere. And looking back at the script, I'm glad I didn't. But this game also altered my view on death and changed my perspective on things. But I'll talk more about that later. Your goal in the game is basically to help carry out the last requests of spirits you meet in order to help them pass over to the other side, whilst gathering resources and using upgrades to explore the world in order to better carry out their requests and be a source of comfort in their final moments. And so, the premise explained, let's actually get into the game. It opens with the protagonist Stella and her cat Daffodil waking up on a boat. Before then, we see a large figure rowing a boat through an ocean of red. He then stops and begins to speak to Stella. This is Charon, the Spiritfarer, or at least until Stella got here, as soon he'll be leaving, and Stella will be taking over as the next Spiritfarer, as soon he'll be gone from this world. He then tells Stella her duty, to gather spirits from islands, and when they're ready to bring them here, and that Stella needs to help them fulfill their last requests. It then shows a beautiful view of the Everdoor, the Alpha where everything starts, the Omega where everything ends, and also where you'll probably break down into tears later on in the game. Anyway, he then gives Stella the Everlight, a powerful orb of light that we use throughout the game, with him saying things about the Everlight representing hope. However, after this, Charon finally enters the Everdoor and passes over to the other side. Stella then rows away, and you make it to the first island of the game. On this island you explore and jump around until you see a person, so you speak to them and they seem to recognise Stella, before then saying that her name is Gwen. She says that she's been stuck on this island for a week, and then we see a large boat that Stella can use as the Spiritfarer. So you go on that boat and see Gwen, where then she reveals herself, and she is now the first spirit you have to look after as the Spiritfarer. She then asks you to hug her. As you speak to her, she reveals more of her memories. You then enter the ship's cabin, and now finally you can enter the world of Spiritfarer. You then speak to Gwen more and she explains more stuff to you, but what's even more strange is how she seems to know Stella, something that'll make a lot of sense later. Anyway, you then make it to the shipwright and fix the ship, and from here the actual game begins. Throughout Spiritfarer, all the spirits you meet are so diverse and different, with all uniquely heartbreaking stories to accompany them, and I think Gwen is the perfect example of that. Gwen is basically the tutorial spirit, teaching you all the basic mechanics you'll need to play the game, but she's also a tutorial on setting your expectations on just how heartbreaking this game can be. This happens for most of the start of the game, like her helping you with the jellyfish event, where jellyfish fly across the screen and you have to gather them, or teaching you how to cut down trees, and it's like this until you go to Hummingberg, where you see a vast bustling town with lots of people, and it's also where you can upgrade yourself at a monument. You then head to another island where you meet Atoll, a friendly frog that you recruit to your boat, who's revealed to be the uncle of Stella, again someone else that seems to know her. Atoll brings so much comfort and joy to the ship and perfectly highlights one of the features of this game that makes it so sad. Throughout your journey you'll meet a lot of different people, all with different personalities, likes and dislikes and backstories, which all makes them feel so real and alive. You begin to connect with them, some you really like and others you can't stand, but either way they're also memorable and begin to stick with you, even being able to relate some characters to people you know in real life, like friends, family or even pets, which is why it makes it all the more painful when you have to let them pass over to the other side, never to see them again. But the relationships you build with these characters are strong, and the game is intentionally made for that, as each day you have to talk, feed and hug every spirit in order to keep them happy and maintain the ship. And the hugs especially make you feel a deep connection with them, and it's a recurring motif used throughout the game, and often subverted to break your heart. Anyway, from here you meet the next of the spirits, Summer, who also seems to recognise and remember Stella. She then joins the ship and she's revealed to be a snake. Summer is unique, as she begins to teach you things that you'll use repeatedly throughout the game, like the plant song which helps your crops grow, and not only is it a moment of bonding with Summer, but it is also something you still use long after she's gone, and it acts as a painful reminder of her, similar to how grief is in real life, where things that remind you of a person that died brings a really powerful sense of sorrow. After this, Gwen says that Stella always cared so much about others, and later she then asks for her own house on the boat, something I'll touch more on later, but just know this small feature makes the emotional impact of the game hit way harder. Now from here I'm going to be going over Gwen's story, as most of my analysis relies off explaining at least one character from start to finish, and to be honest I feel Gwen's story to also be one of the most evocative stories from this game. But before that I want to talk about the next game, OMORI. OMORI, like the other games in this video, is really a one-of-a-kind game, taking inspiration from Yume, Nikki and Earthbound, and transforming it into a really powerful and transcendent piece of art. OMORI as a game had a huge effect on me, as not only did it make me cry, which is an achievement by itself, but it also had a story that really resonated with me, and as quickly became one of my favourite games. OMORI is a game about the protagonist Sunny, a hikikomori, escaping away into the safety and comfort of the world of Headspace as a form of escapism away from something that happened. What was the something that happened? Don't worry about it, it's fine. Anyway, in doing so he takes on the identity of OMORI, being himself but as a 12-year-old, and being surrounded by fake versions of his friends. Now Headspace is where a lot of the game takes place, and has a lot to do with the idea of escapism. I wonder if there's someone who did a video essay diving into that theme. No? Well, alrighty then. However, whilst Headspace is mostly whimsical and detached from everything, there are some moments that are still so bittersweet and set up painful moments later on. Now I've covered OMORI once before, however that focused more on the theme of escapism, and when I first came up with this video idea, I'd originally intended to include OMORI, and so instead of focusing on escapism like my last video, I'll be focusing more on the emotional moments and techniques the game uses to make you cry. However, Headspace isn't the only location Sunny escapes to, as there's a place called Whitespace, a place devoid of anything external and is the ultimate escape. And it's also where the game starts. The game opens with text on screen that provides some absolutely insane foreshadowing, where a voice says everything will be okay. Then all the sound cuts and it says welcome to Whitespace, with the view of OMORI lying there. Still, it then says, you've been living here for as long as you can remember, and then shows you all of Whitespace following down a long dangling black light bulb. There's not really much to do in Whitespace. You can walk around and nothing happens. That is until you go through a door and enter the neighbour's room. This room contains some of OMORI's friends, like Aubrey, Kel and Hero. And for a lot of my points to make sense, I just want to go through the opening of the game so we're all on the same page about everything. Following this you enter the space in between, with there being 4 ways you can go, 3 of which blocked off by OMORI's fear. And so you go down, entering a playground where you see OMORI's sister, Mari, speaking to another one of OMORI's friends, Basil. Everyone talks and it's really sweet and wholesome, and you get to go through a photo album of all the happy memories they got to share with each other. Then you decide to go to Basil's house, while simultaneously given a tutorial on the battle system of the game revolving around emotions. You then make it to Basil's house, where after an argument the photos from the album get scattered everywhere, and so you go into Basil's house to replace them, looking back through all the photos as you do, but then another photo appears on the ground. A photo that makes Basil panicked, and then OMORI is now sent back to the safety of Whitespace, where to leave OMORI has to do this. You are then shown a cutscene of Sunny and Basil reflecting on a bunch of photos that I'll talk more about soon, and then you see Sunny waking up, with the visuals and colours being completely different from what you've seen so far, and you now understand that Headspace isn't as real as you thought, as you see the life and depressing routine of Sunny, a hikikomori, and it uses horror throughout to represent Sunny's depression and struggles with escapism, wanting the comfort of Headspace and the persona of OMORI, and feeling scared to exist in reality. Most of the game follows this structure, with the Headspace segments of whimsical battles and adventures detached from reality are broken up by segments in the real world, where you slowly learn the sad truth about why Sunny has been stuck inside, and why him and his friends fell apart. You see, the thing that makes this game so heartbreaking and sad revolves around one thing, and that is the death of Sunny's sister, Mari, and how different characters and scenes act towards this death as a source of great emotional resonance throughout the game. This death is the reason that Sunny escaped away as a hikikomori, and the whole of Headspace is an imagined fantasy world with him and all his friends stuck in the form they were before she died. However, at the start of the game you assume Headspace to be real, as it begins there, with you meeting Mari with her caring and loving attitude towards Sunny being evident in the first part of the game, where she acts as a source of comfort being confined to her picnic blanket, yet in the real world she's nowhere to be found outside of a jump scare, with no reference being made to her until Aubrey, one of Sunny's former friends, reveals that she's dead. And this moment really leaves a heavy and lasting impact, as the whimsy you're used to gets crushed with heavy realism. And after returning to Headspace and seeing Mari again, after learning she's dead is such a harrowing and shocking feeling. It's really sad knowing that this was the reason they all fell apart as friends, and the reason why Sunny became a hikikomori. And for those that don't know, a hikikomori is someone that undergoes severe withdrawal from society, with the name Omori coming from the term hikikomori, and links heavily to the theme of escapism. So I won't really cover it as in depth, but it's important context to know, with hikikomori roughly translating to pulling inward, with the theme of pulling inward being something we see repeatedly throughout. Before Your Eyes is by far the saddest game I've ever played, and had me in tears after finishing it, partly due to my strong personal connection to it. The game revolves around one core mechanic. Every time you blink, you jump forward in time, using an eye tracker to detect your eyes, as you reflect and travel through the story of your life. Some parts tragic that'll make you weep, others euphoric with moments that you wish you could stay in. Yet because you have to blink, at some point you'll have to move on, and I would say that it's one of the best games I've ever played. This game is so special to me because the first time I played it was on the same day that one of my family members died. I had bought it the night before, and on that day in the whirlwind of emotions, I found myself alone at home, playing this game. Though I'll talk more about that and how it affected my view of this game later, but first let's actually dive into it. You end up in a strange blue world where you're taught how to use the blink feature of the game, and how the metronome indicates you can jump into the future. It then makes you blink more and more until you end up in the sea. Until then.
Well, hello there, stranger.
This is the ferryman, and he chose you specifically, and while he is poor with words, he's taking you to the giant tower to see the gatekeeper. He wants to tell your entire life story for you to be judged, and hopefully get you into a good afterlife. And so he tells you to show him everything from the very beginning.
But understand, no matter how much you like it, you're not going to be able to stay, alright?
And that when you blink you'll go forward in time, and so you go to the very first memory.
And just try to enjoy it this time.
You blink to the view of the beach on a lovely warm day and hear the voice of a woman. You blink again and it reveals more of this beach, now later on in the day, and see the woman which you assume to be your mother. It's really atmospheric and peaceful here, yet it's just as quickly over as you blink again, now showing the beach at night time. Anyway, after another blink you end up here.
Okay, go ahead, kid.
On Benny's first birthday, and it reveals the kitchen with Benny's father filming excitedly. Upon blinking again, you hear the sound of piano in the background with a toy one in front of you, before then revealing it's your mother playing piano as you listen intently. You then go through more memories like playing with a toy boat in the bath, and your mother talking about submitting her music.
I'm sending it to my mentor next week.
Then taking you to a warm memory of watching clouds in the sky as your parents wonder about you and your future.
Do you think he's going to be smart?
I don't see why not. We're both pretty smart.
It then shows you painting while your mother argues on the phone about her music, but this establishes one of the core themes of the game, and that is art and music, something heavily important later on. Then your mother, sounding rejected, hangs up the phone.
Thank you for considering my piece, John.
The next memory then takes you to reading a scrapbook with your mother, where you begin to look at photos of your mother as a child learning piano, and learning about your grandfather too, and his passion for music.
I think he hoped to make it further than conducting the high school choir.
However, as you go through the scrapbook more, the metronome appears, meaning you need to keep your eyes open in order to hear the rest of the story, where you learn about how she may be dissatisfied in life. This opening to the game I find to be really powerful, and from the second I started playing it I began to cry, for reasons I'll explain later, but it really hit me hard. The warm colours throughout these early memories give it such life and vibrance, and how it's all wavy and how we see more parts of each memories get revealed throughout represents the idea of memories being recalled, and the bright colours also give it a nostalgic and childlike view of what you're experiencing. This opening really hit me hard, and also perfectly introduces the game mechanics of blinking, as in these moments you wish you could stay for longer. You wish you could hear your mother play piano for longer, or enjoy your father's company, yet like with everything you have to keep moving forward. After this you see a memory of you getting an adopted cat temporarily as a pet, with your dad being extremely excited about it. The next few scenes show you bonding with the cat and playing piano with it, as your mother teaches you piano, then seeing your father talk you through another scrapbook, and detailing how they met at college while she was studying music composition, and about their time together. You go through more and more memories like your first time using the big piano, and playing the piece your mother composed.
That's my piece. How did you figure out how to play that?
Where you now begin to get serious piano lessons, yet also your passion for drawing emerges, as you draw more and more, each time getting better and better at it, whilst in the background you hear about your grandfather flying in to visit. You then enter probably one of the most important scenes in the game. However, I'll come back to this later on as it makes way more sense in retrospect. But in this she says how she hasn't seen her father in 10 years, before you then blink. You awake in a dark room, illuminated faintly by the moonlight. With the sound of a telephone ringing, you slowly begin to walk towards it, inching closer and closer, with most of the room being consumed by a shadowy blanket. Yet then the metronome appears, and you try to keep your eyes open. The room is consumed by shadow and you succumb to the blink, not getting to hear the phone call. I'm sure this will have no significance at all. Anyway, you then get more piano lessons from your mother, where another mechanic's introduced. Where to play the piano, you need to move where you're looking in time with the flow of the music. Something that's simple now but will get way harder later on. However, your mother is really hard on you with practicing.
You're off, Ben. You can't hear that?
Things seem more wholesome, as you take photos, yet for some reason your mother now seems upset and abrasive. Her piano now consumed with mountains of paper and books. You then take photos outside until late in the day, and you see a missing poster for your pet cat. So I mentioned earlier about how my experience with this game was unique, because I played it literally hours after finding out that one of my family members died. And I think that's why this game resonated with me so strongly. I'll go into that now. The whole idea of the game going through your life, flashing before your eyes, really sat heavy with me from the intro of the game, as you see a sea of lost souls paired with the warmth and nostalgia captured in the memories you see. It plays off the idea of wishing for a simpler time, when everything seems happy and perfect, and everyone is there, and the game gives you an opportunity to learn about and bond with your mother and father. And this really amplifies the emotions at the end of the game. These moments feel like ones you're desperate to stay in, yet time moves on just like in real life. And I think that's why this part of the game hit so heavy for me upon replaying. However, the first time I played it I didn't cry that much. Sure, I was somewhat misty-eyed at certain parts, but still throughout the whole time playing, it felt like something was holding me back. However, I'll cover more of the game before talking more about that. Okay, now back to Spiritfarer. After finishing building Gwen's house, she is really appreciative. And after this, not much happens, as you sail for multiple days, growing a stronger bond with Gwen, giving her her favourite foods like coffee and popcorn, and hugging her as well, until she asks you to build a loom, something that Gwen enjoys, and another part that strengthens your connection with her, as you can see Gwen using the loom from time to time. And this links back to the same idea as with Summer, as once she's gone, the loom feels empty. You expect or hope she'd be there, but she's gone. But again, that sadness can only be felt if you actually connect with and know the character, and that's why it's so important to have that slow build of getting to know her. Gwen then speaks to Stella, and says that her parents' manor by the lake isn't too far from where you are, and that while she's trying to avoid it, it's become hard to ignore, and while she may only find regrets and sorrows there, it's worth a try. And so you head for a nostalgic trip to the Villa Maggiore, and you go to the island and see a great big manor. Gwen then says how long it's been, and reflects on it, saying since her father died her mother hasn't been there much, before then realising she's getting emotional and saying she loved the house as much as she hated it. However, with the pain still lingering, she doesn't want to go in, and instead sends Stella to find her old music box. This part of the game is so atmospheric, with the music seeming so nostalgic and joyful, and the visuals reflect this with an expressive look, as Stella runs through the house and the stars beaming down behind, all creating a serene experience. However, seeing it so empty and with Gwen's sadness and what she says, it also juxtaposes to create for an experience with a painful serenity. After this, you give Gwen her music box, and she again reflects on a past memory before then wanting to get back to the boat and forget about this place. You speak to her again, she talks about her father's death. The night he died, her mother was on the plane, and how she talked to someone called Doug on the phone for an hour, and that his last words were that he loved her. It's a bittersweet feeling you get from Gwen's story, and you get the sense she never had the best relationship with her father, and how she feels so sad yet also so nostalgic for her old home. After this, Gwen doesn't really do much for a while, as you go about your voyage and focus more on the other spirits, like Summer, Atoll and Alice, who I'll talk more about later, as you venture through this beautiful world. After a while, Gwen then asks for her home to be improved, and so you improve it and you speak to her. She seems really pleased with it and is really appreciative of it. However, shortly after this, you speak to Gwen again, and she says she needs some space by herself, and that going back to the villa was a bad idea, yet still saying that Stella has treated her great. And so after this, Gwen's locked in her room, with you being unable to speak to her until she feels better. And so you wait. The day-to-day life of the game takes back over. You explore, speak to the other spirits, gather resources, and enjoy the wonders that this strange yet idyllic world holds. That is until you enter Gwen's house and see that she's missing, and you find out that she went back to her parents' house. So you go there and find her, where she apologises for going back to her parents' house, with her not being able to explain herself, as she just wanted to finish it off and decide how she goes on her own terms, and not be taken away. She then says how she feels selfish, and that sometimes she wishes she could have been like Stella, and you then hug each other. You then speak to her on the boat, and you are then met with one final request. Take Gwen to the Ever Door. Even though this whole game is about death and you're told it from the beginning, it still feels sudden and shocking to see the Everdor request. When you meet Gwen or any other spirit, you know that there will come a time that they have to go. Yet as you bond and connect with them, you begin to forget that as the brighter parts of the game takes hold. You do request after request and get closer to them, only for them to be ready to leave, satisfied with the life they've lived, and waiting to move on. Yet it still feels so visceral and unexpected. Anyway, you begin to sail towards the Everdor, entering a sea of red with beautiful white trees and foliage, and it looks so distinct from anything else in the game, and you get a strong feeling of finality. Gwen then asks Stella to accompany her, and she walks down to the rowboat, before then giving Stella her old lighter she stole from her father, and says to remember her in the good times and in the bad, as they're intertwined. As every other spirit is gathered around to see Gwen off, you then get on the boat and set off for the Everdor. You row into a red river with beautiful white trees, and Gwen begins to say that she couldn't escape getting here, and that she never was one to dwell on the past due to it being overwhelming. And as the music begins to swell, she begins to speak more, and she says that she's always said that people come and go but don't pay attention to each other, and that lives are only ever in parallel, before then saying it's bullshit, and that Stella is proof of it through her caring nature, before then saying she should probably forgive her father with that last shred of strength in her, and questions if it would make her a good person. But she doesn't care, as she had her best friend by her side, Stella, before then complimenting her and saying she was a guiding beacon of light, one that she was unable to see until now. And you then reach the Everdor. Tranquil music begins to play as Stella approaches the Everdor closer and closer. Gwen then thanks Stella, and then... It then shows a view of a starry sky, as a constellation forms in the shape of Gwen. You arrive in an ethereal place with strange platforms on a starry celestial background. You then see some butterflies which you approach and... an image begins to form of a child at a family dinner, and you begin to assume that this is a retelling of Gwen's life, further supported by you platforming further to reveal the next image, revealing the same child grown up on a bike ride, and you then head to the next image. However then, you see a strange owl creature that flies off. Anyway, you then reach the next image where it again shows another part of Gwen's life, her celebrating on the balcony of her parents' manor. This part of the game is so somber and really acts as a large emotional punch to what came before, as it's sad seeing Gwen's life knowing that she's gone, with the visuals and music further elevating and helping this. Anyway, you then reach the top where... you're confronted by the owl, who says that they've been watching Stella for a long time, and Stella kept her distance, but knew they were there, and that since the beginning they were a part of Stella. It then says vague stuff about Stella and her life before then saying the hourglass has turned, and that Stella has found them. They tell Stella to resume her duties, and that they'll meet again soon. You arrive back at the ship, and in Gwen's room are flowers grown by her bed, and upon harvesting them you get the spirit flower, something I'll discuss later on. I hope with that section I was able to convey just how powerful both that scene is and the build up to it is, and I really hope I can get across just how sad this part of the game is. What makes this part of the game so effective is that you can really get to know the spirits, their lives, their hopes and fears and personalities, and you can relate to them, or relate to knowing people like them, and it takes multiple hours before you reach this part of the game, allowing enough time to build that connection. And that's what makes this death so special to me, as it's the first in the game after a long time of build up. And it's also after this first death that you realise that this game isn't just about death, but it's also about grief. You see, each spirit you have on your ship will at some point request you to build a house for them, and so as you progress through the game, more and more houses are built on your ship. Yet, even after the spirits pass on, you still can't remove the houses, acting as a constant reminder of what you lost. And it's incredible how this game can create a feeling of grief. And this grief is further reinforced through other building skills or activities we associate with those characters, where once they pass on you feel a deep sense of sorrow doing those things or going to those buildings that were once enjoyed by someone you lost. Yet there's also a strong idea of legacy, and how they live on even after death, and I think one of the strongest examples of that is the star constellation. You see, after each spirit passes on, a constellation resembling them forms in the sky, and at night the sky is then filled with stars of spirits once lost. And it's a really beautiful thing, that while they may be gone, them and the bond you had with them will always be with you. Then there's also the Spirit Flower, something that grows in the beds of passed on spirits, that can allow you to upgrade your ship, which helps you go further in the game as you can reach new areas with the upgrades, and in a way shows that the spirits are still with you in some form. Overall, through the Spirit Flowers and constellations, we can see that the spirits live on through those, and help you go further. Yet it still feels empty without them, as their houses lay untouched and the places you once bonded with them now feel painful to revisit. And that's what makes this game so special, as while it masterfully establishes the spirits and grows your relationship with them through things like conversations, sharing stories, or doing activities that give you an insight into their personality, it also manages to massively subvert all that after the spirits die, to give it a strong emotional impact. And I think Gwen's story perfectly captures that, as we see her journey of acceptance with herself and her family. Yet we also bond with her through the loom, only for her to then pass on, leaving behind a constellation and an empty house. Also, just quickly, if you've enjoyed this so far, it'd help me out so much if you could subscribe. Okay, now back to OMORI. Now, one of the most heartbreaking parts of this game, though, in the context is the lost library and photo album scenes. You see, the photo album is a recurring motif seen throughout OMORI, with you first being introduced to it at the start of the game in Headspace, where you see photos of all of OMORI's friends, like Basil, Aubrey, Kel, Hera, and Mari, all having fun together, like making flower crowns or having a picnic, and this moment feels so warm and nostalgic, with the photo album being a recurring motif throughout the game, and triggers the beginning of the narrative, as the stray photo that causes Basil to panic is what sends OMORI back to Whitespace, and sets everything in motion, and also quickly shows a photo of a smashed violin, which relates to another photo album which we see way later on. But the reason why the photo album is so important to the narrative is an intentional choice, as it symbolises that idea of stability and warm friendships, and those happy and cherished memories that Sunny tries so desperately to cling on to, even though it's not like that anymore, with everyone moving on and Mari being dead. We see more examples of Sunny clinging on to those happy memories in the Lost Library area, where after a climactic boss fight in Headspace, OMORI descends through a giant hole in the floor, into the most hidden corners of his memory, where he ends up in the Lost Library, with its moody blue colour palette, old trees and webs and a certain type of flower, all giving it a feeling different from anywhere else in the game. And whilst walking through this library, you see a ghostly representation of Mari descending the stairs. And it's so sad to see her, as by this point in the game you know she's dead in real life, and so seeing glimpses of her shine through OMORI's escapism gives a really heartbreaking feeling. And through the books in this library you get glimpses into the life they used to live before she passed away, the building of a treehouse on a sunny day, their times at school together, the tranquil car rides back from a long day out, all of it giving such a sense of warmth and nostalgia, and all of it creating for a deeply moving and emotional experience, as on the one hand these memories are happy and warm, but they become extremely melancholic knowing that this happiness wouldn't last, and soon it would all fall apart. And this exact same feeling is created by the photo albums too, as later in the game you learn that the photo album from Headspace is a real item, and one that is also of extreme importance, as you go through looking at all the photos, with some of them being similar to the Headspace ones, as you reflect on a time now gone for good, with the photos also linking to the stuff you read in the library, and again creates a moment of extreme sadness. This part of the game is extremely effective at making you emotional, and made a lot of people tear up at those parts, as by having moments of extreme nostalgia and warmth, juxtaposed with the knowledge of Mari's death and having the photo album used as a motif throughout the game to represent this idea, makes it deeply moving and emotional to play through. Another part that's related to the photo album is the cutscene we see just before we're introduced to Sunny, and just after OMORI gets sent back to Whitespace, where Basil talks about the photos, showing them sat side by side looking at all of them, saying, "These are all of our memories together," showing them scattered across, saying, "They're a little sad now, but we should be happy that they happened at all," and then showing Basil and Sunny holding hands looking at the photos before then saying, "Let's make some new memories together, okay?" What makes this scene so particularly heartbreaking is that based on details later on in the game we learn that this took place after Mari's death, with Basil desperately trying to keep Sunny from falling into escapism due to his grief, and not wanting them to fall apart, with his dialogue also perfectly encapsulating my feelings towards a photo album in this game, with them being sad in retrospect. But Basil seems hopeful for the future, and appreciates that they even happened, and wants to try to make new memories and move on. However, seeing him in the real world segments he doesn't seem to be doing as good as in this scene, implying that the years of grief and loneliness has really weathered away at that small bit of hope he had left, with this scene also giving us a lot of insight into Basil and Sunny's relationship, as their friendship is one which permeates its way through the game's story. A part of the game I didn't cover the first time I talked about OMORI was the lake scene, and honestly it's such an amazing part of the game that really captures so much about what makes this game so special and emotional. You see, in between OMORI's adventures in Headspace, he also goes on adventures in the real world, as in just a few days he'll be moving away for good, leaving everything behind. And throughout this there's the overarching plot of figuring out what what happened with Basil, Aubrey and the photo album, with Aubrey bullying him and stealing the album off him, with this being a point of conflict throughout the real world segments, leading you to confront them in the woods, a part of the woods where they all would hang out before Mori died and they all stopped being friends. However, you don't learn this till later on in the game. Aubrey wants to be left alone and then begins to get angry at everyone, asking them where they were when Mori died, and then approaching Basil saying he's the worst, and is angry that he still shows his face after something he did. He then tries to talk to her before then. Due to Aubrey's fit of rage, Basil falls into the lake, and now Sunny is tasked with helping Basil. However, upon doing so, tendrils begin to close in upon Sunny, as he's scared to go in the water. Sunny then goes in the water to save Basil. And you end up in an underwater version of Sunny's house, at the top of the stairs, a location we see throughout the game being not quite headspace but also not quite reality, as we see creepy and unnatural things, and every door you try to open is locked, leading you to descend the stairs where you see Mari, as she looks at Sunny before beginning to walk off, being just out of reach of him, never able to get any closer to her, as you descend this long staircase going deeper underwater. Before then, she stops, and lets you get slightly closer, with strange tendrils beginning to close in, getting closer and closer to Sunny, until you reach the bottom of the stairs, where Mari walks off into the darkness. You follow her, seeing a knife on the floor, where then Sunny, terrified, enters battle with the something, a mess of vines deep underwater as Sunny begins to try to compose himself, with his attacks doing nothing to stop it. Yet then a voice reaches out to Sunny, telling him to not be afraid, and that it's not as scary as he thinks. And so you use the calm down ability with the voice saying to keep going, and not give up, no matter how impossible it seems, where Sunny now gains another ability, Persist. So you use this ability when now things are brighter, as you get closer to the surface of the water, using the Persist ability more and more where it again gets brighter, with the vines going further down until you then persist for one final time, where then this moment is just so emotional and beautiful. Sunny, close to drowning, is given the strength to continue on by his sister. With this and the fact that the song is called Dear Little Brother implies that this voice is Mari's, guiding him from beyond the grave, with this moment being just so impactful, as after being unable to reach Mari for the whole scene, her love for her brother shines through, and allows Sunny to have the strength to persist, and eventually be saved. Now obviously I think this is all metaphorical. This isn't actually Mari's ghost or anything, and is more of a representation of Sunny's subconscious, and how he views Mari, which makes this even sadder as it means he would look up to her for support and help, and now that she's gone he doesn't have that anymore. Anyway, in reality, Sunny is saved by Hero, who had returned from college that day. One of the most emotional parts of this scene is the music, with the song playing being called Dear Little Brother, featuring a slow, nostalgic and gentle variation on Mari's leitmotif heard in the song By Your Side, and gives this whole scene an even more visceral feeling, as though this is a memory of Mari reaching out to Sunny, guiding him from beyond the grave, with the song title being very protective, calling him her little brother, with us seeing how Mari helps Sunny, and is protective over him in this scene, or at least the spirit of her, as all of this perfectly shows the loss and pain Sunny feels in losing his older sister, being so close yet so out of reach, like we see throughout Headspace in the photo album, yet you can never reach her or those happy moments again, and this leading into a fight with the something also represents Sunny's grief and depression associated with her death, how this brings back deep pain to him and having to remember it really hurts him. The song By Your Side is also an amazing song that has such warmth to it, and feels so comforting, with the game playing it at various moments to give that feeling of happiness and peace, but also uses it in other moments to subvert those feelings, to give moments extra emotional resonance, with music being a really effective tool in making people cry, with the scene that's the best example of this is where Sunny and his friends visit Mari's grave. But to go through that I need to go through Sunny's last day in Faraway Town, as not only does it contain that scene, but it also contains some of the most sentimental and tragic scenes in the entire game. But before that I want to talk about Before Your Eyes. Eventually your cat comes home and it's pregnant with multiple kittens, which only makes your parents argue more.
For a professor of signs and symbols, you're really bad at reading them.
You then quickly go through the stages of growing up through childhood, with all your toys and room changing all around you as you blink, with your mother proud of you drawing abstractly.
He keeps coloring the grass blue, the ocean green, and then the sky red. No, are you kidding? I love it.
However then, you are now in your kitchen, dark and consumed by shadow, slowly creeping towards the back door just like the phone scene earlier. The metronome appears as you go closer and closer to the door, the rest of the room consumed by darkness as you focus on the door, with growling animal sounds coming from behind. However, with no energy left, you blink. Time begins to pass more quickly now, as you go through a couple more memories of your mother teaching you piano, yet the question on what the door and the phone meant still linger in the back of your mind. Time passes more quickly now, with singular memories now bleeding into one another, and we get to see more of Benny's out-of-the-box thinking.
The quiz said find the 0, and he just drew an arrow pointing to it.
Your room then changes once again, now growing up and getting rid of toys, as your room matures and you earn more and more piano trophies. It then goes to a memory of you in your backyard taking photos, but suddenly you see someone new moving in.
Fall back, you fool!
Until then,
Hey, you! Yeah, you!
this is Chloe, one of the most important characters in this story. However, for now, she just asks you to take a photo of her. After playing piano for a crowded dinner party with your parents' colleagues, you end up in class at school and Chloe is there too, giving you a note saying she wants nothing to do with you. It's now Benny's 11th birthday. He's just gotten a games console and life seems to be going well for him. And despite writing she doesn't want anything to do with Benny, they've become close friends playing games together while he draws. Life moves on more as your mother wants to send Benny to a specialist music school, as you sit in the back of a car ride thinking about the potential new life. So you're tensely interviewed by a strict principal, who wants to hear the ability of Benny in a later audition, with only a month to practice and prepare. On the ride back you look through the sheet music nervously, before then you begin practicing rigorously. However, midway through there's a call from Chloe, that you choose to answer to the upset of your mother, only causing an argument.
Completely checked out of.
Okay.
Did I just cause a fight with your parents?
One of the best aspects of this game is the blinking feature, and I think it's time I properly explain what makes it so amazing and emotionally impactful. Every time the metronome appears, it means when you blink you jump forward in time, but blinking is human. It's natural and it's inevitable, just like the flow of time. All things we see in this game. We see this used in the long walking segments where it's a battle of your eye stamina to see how long you can keep them open for, but eventually you have to blink. However, this also works for the moments you want to stay in, as you purposely try to keep your eyes open for as long as possible just to exist there for longer. To hear more things and be more aware, yet again you have to blink and move on. Linking to the core messages of this game around life and the flow of time, with the metronome perfectly representing that. And in a way this also helps make you cry more, as they're probably going to get pretty watery keeping your eyes open that long. But also the fact you have to play the game with your eyes makes you feel more present in the moment, and makes all the emotional impacts hit even harder than they would if you were just playing a standard game, as the eye tracker captures your blinks. You're then in class, learning about Anubis and other boring stuff, so you draw instead, but alongside you is Chloe, where she passes you a note that asks you to draw the teacher and meet her at night the next day. It's now the day before your audition. You are frantically practicing the piano with Benny's parents arguing in the background about Chloe, with the music drowning it out. You're then in bed later on that day.
Lights out. You need to be rested for tomorrow.
Your mother tells you to sleep until suddenly, you are now met with a huge choice. Do you sneak out with Chloe, or do you get a good night's sleep in preparation for the audition that could change your life? And so you decide to sleep. Everyone's eyes are on you as you begin to play the piano, with the part you have to look at to play starting off small but getting bigger as you lose yourself in playing the music, until you then blink. It's now the car ride back, and your mother tries to reassure you.
And I could tell you were having so much fun up there.
You stare out the window, into the stars above as your mother speaks reassuringly in the background, and you wonder if you'll make it in. But there's no time for that, you need to keep moving forward. It's moments like these you wish you could really stay in. Your parents talking positively about your audition, the warmth you feel in being with them, and the feeling that for just this brief moment of stillness, that everything is okay. And in the sky you can move your eyes to form letters in the constellations in the sky, revealing letters, a T, an A, an E. As you try not to blink until you reveal enough letters to understand it says, stay here, and you really wish you could if it wasn't for the metronome. I feel like the most effective part of this game is how it creates moments that you want to really stay in. Moments that feel so personal and comforting that you wish you could stay there and take it all in. One of my most fondest memories of that family member I lost was getting a car ride to school from them. I remember that feeling of stillness, sinking into the car seat as they told me all sorts of facts and stories about the local area. I miss that. If there's a moment with them I could go back to like in Before Your Eyes, I want to be there again, sinking into that car seat, taking in all of my surroundings and getting to be with them one last time. And that's why Before Your Eyes hit so hard for me, is because it managed to create moments that felt like that. Moments like the car ride or the beach scene that feel so warm and soothing, like you want to stay there for longer, but due to the march of time you have to keep moving forward. You then go into finding out if you got into the school or not, your parents watching with excitement as you open the letter, your heart beating fast, you begin to read it, and
Why are you being silent, Ben?
the world goes dark around you as your mother sounds defeated.
I mean, it would have been a great opportunity, but it's nothing life or death.
And to make matters worse, Benny's now gotten sick and is to take some time off school.
It's such a crucial time in his development.
You're in a dark hallway in your house, walking to a door left slightly ajar, as your parents talk quietly about something, yet fades to black and you can't quite hear the rest. The tone of the game shifts quite heavily after the rejection, with everything feeling so off, with Benny sitting at the beach just staring at the sky. And this is quite a low part of the game, or at least that is until...
I want you to figure out something actually productive to do while you're home from school.
So Benny goes to a desk and grabs his childhood boat toy and uses it as inspiration to begin to draw again, starting as a rough doodle but then getting better over time, as he draws it more and more with his parents seeming excited about it.
He's becoming completely obsessed.
Suddenly he gets so good he's able to get first place at an art competition, and so because of all of this he decides to apply to an art school and begins to be taught professionally.
You are here to learn to be artists.
And so Benny improves more and more, drawing onto the canvas whilst being lectured by his teacher. The drawing mechanic in this game relies on blinking to select what you want to draw from real life, and then depending on how long you stare at the canvas for, the drawing you make will become more and more abstract. And so Benny uses this to create profound and wonderful pieces of art, which catches the attention of his art teacher.
I want you all to take a long look at what Mr. Bryn has done here.
And makes a piece of art so good it stuns his teacher and his whole class, displaying it to all of them.
He has reached down deep within himself and created a masterpiece.
And soon his art is being displayed at a gallery, being broken apart by snobs, as now his art becomes an actual career for him.
The opposite of what being a starving artist is supposed to feel like.
As he receives some advice from his mother now in his own apartment. You're then at a business meeting with a choice to sign a contract with a scummy businesswoman, and so you decide to crumple it in front of her.
Well, look at that.
And you then throw it.
Okay, that's it.
And you and your teacher enjoy a nice meal together. It really feels like things are looking up, and everything is going so well, and you're finally recognised for your earlier talent. It feels like nothing can stop you. You can do anything, go anywhere, and so you go and spend time in Greece, creating your greatest masterpiece yet. This part of the game is honestly one of the best sequences throughout the whole thing. The way it takes you from one of the lowest points in Benny's life, where he's rejected from a music school and it seems that his future as a musician is over, and then he gets sick and has to take time off school and his parents seem defeated too. All of it making for such a sad and low tone, until he discovers art again, and through making art everything improves for him. The music as well, elevating it and really makes it feel so amazing, with the action happening one after the other, each scene being better than the last, and it really gives a sense that you're on top of the world. And I think that's a really strong point of this game, in how effortlessly it creates emotions in the various sequences of it, but that energy doesn't last for long as soon it all comes crashing down. Alright, now back to Spiritfarer. So now that I've explained how the deaths and usual flow of the game goes, let me now cover the second saddest part of this game, a part that impacted me so heavily that made me want to make a video on this game for the last 2 years, and that part is Alice. However, first I just want to take some time to appreciate other aspects of this game and also lighten things up a bit before getting into some pretty emotionally taxing stuff. Spiritfarer has a vast open world which makes every single time you venture into a new island a cool experience, as there's a short cutscene upon arriving on a new island. The adventuring part makes the game cooler with an added element of surprise and travel, but it doesn't make it tedious by making you travel for long periods of time, as there's a guy called Alex who lets you fast travel around the map. I think the large map of this game is to both its strength but also some points of weakness, as it does create a huge sense of scale as though you're on a grand adventure, exploring a strange and vast world. However, it does make the game drag on at times. The world is separated into 4-ish main regions: the main ocean area, the ice area, the rocky area, and the fog area, with the ice, rocky, and fog areas all needing upgrades by the shipwright, which requires Spiritflowers to upgrade, which also adds another layer to the game around accepting death, as you can postpone and delay taking them to the Everdoor all you want, but at some point if you truly want to move on, you need to let them go. I think that's a really powerful part of the game as it forces you to take action even when it hurts. Okay, now on to Alice. We first meet Alice at an island as part of a quest to bring her sheep, and she already speaks extremely friendly and polite, before then saying how she would like a house of her own, to which you then build and she's extremely thankful before then joining your ship, and revealing herself to be a fragile and sweet old lady. Alice as a spirit is just really wholesome around the ship, from helping with the sheep or even cooking for the whole crew, allowing people to be fed well, and because of that you can grow attached to her more than the other spirits. She does however ask you to improve a house with a wardrobe, something that will be very relevant later on. However, Alice mainly just takes a back seat for a while, just living amongst everyone else while other stories like Gwen's take place. Yet brewing in the background is one of the most heart-wrenching and tragic stories that this game holds. After improving Alice's house you speak to her, and she's incredibly grateful, saying how nice the room feels now and teaches you how to use the wardrobe. and this moment of bonding makes it all the more sad once you lose her. She then shares a wholesome story about her granddaughter, until then finding in a wardrobe a letter from her husband, with a picture of her backyard, where a tree was planted for each of her children, and these memories really warm your heart. Anyway, to remind her of this, you build her an orchard, where she says it reminds her of her husband's one, and reflecting on what it used to be like, and you then grow trees in it, where Alice then says how she never was able to do anything exciting, and that she wants to go on a trip with Stella to Nordweiler, and so you do. Alice begins to relive moments from a romance novel she read, retelling the stories you wander through the snowy town of Nordweiler, and as you do, you really see another side to Alice, as she excitedly tells this story. However, this all quickly comes to an end as she then hurts herself, and feels tired and has to go back, with her getting more and more tired on the walk back, until asking for Stella to help walk her back to the ship. And there's something so emotional yet powerful watching this scene, and how it only sets up more sad things to come. After this, Alice asks for some space away from Stella in quite an abrasive way. To help Alice in her difficulty walking, you move the house to the bottom of the ship, so she can get around easier. You then go up to her and see her wondering where her late husband is, and asking Stella where he is, saying that he could be in the garage, and that she needs her old woolly from him. She then says that her legs can't carry her and asks Stella to help move her to the front of the ship. To comfort Alice, you give her a piece of wool fabric like the one she used to have. Then in the evening, you begin to walk her back, and she tells you a story about her daughter Annie on the beach and the outfit that she wore, something painfully relevant later on. You help her walk again the next morning and you speak to her, where she asks where her daughter is, and talks about her wearing a red hat and outfit, and seems sad wanting to know where she is. And so to help Alice, Stella dresses with the clothing of Annie, and Alice then thinks her to be Annie, and wants to go home. You are then met with one last request. Bring Alice to the Everdoor. This part is so heartbreaking as it's sad to see Alice so lost and confused, and it's especially even sadder watching her deteriorate over the course of the game, going from excitedly telling a story to becoming weak and tired, then getting even weaker and becoming confused, until forgetting Stella altogether, and in a now confused and worried state wants to see her daughter one last time. This is obviously meant to represent diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia, which makes this story more realistic and thus more emotionally impacting, as you may have witnessed the effect of degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia, and how incredibly sad it is to see someone lose themselves and their memories. Alice also makes the Everdoor even more heartbreaking, as again you do need her to pass on to progress in the game to the other areas by using her spirit flower to upgrade, but you want to hold on to her because she's so sweet and brings light to the ship, but seeing the state she's in you feel that it would be best for her to pass on, and so you make the painful choice to bring her to the Everdoor. The ocean turns red as you stand by Alice in her daughter's clothes, with the beautiful white foliage coming into view. You then begin to walk Alice across your ship, still believing you to be Annie, and you see all the other spirits beginning to gather to watch Alice depart as one final send-off, as you then leave for the Everdoor. You row through the beautiful scenery, with Alice appreciating it too, and saying how proud she is of Annie, as she compliments the trees more, saying Eugene will love them, being painfully unaware of what will happen, as you silently continue onwards, as she says how she'd like to come back here, and wishing she could be here forever. She then asks Annie about school, before then remembering she'd graduated and apologising for her confusion, before then she goes quiet for the rest of the ride, as you then reach the Everdoor. She then realises that Stella isn't Annie, and recognises her forgetfulness. You then begin to approach the Everdoor before then she says about Eugene and that when Annie sees her father, she should tell him about the trees and how excited he'll be. Before then... The Everdoor begins to light up and glow, and flashes brightly as Alice passes over to the other side, as it then pans to a starry night sky, as the constellation of Alice begins to form. What makes this Everdoor seem more sad than Gwen's is how confused and lost Alice seems to be, and even in her final moments is still forgetful, showing all the awful impacts that diseases like that can have on people. And it really makes you not want to take people for granted, because people could develop conditions like that, and suddenly they aren't the same. And I think Alice captures that perfectly. This story was just so touching and so sad that it was the moment where I wanted to make a video on this game 2 years ago, and it genuinely made me cry like I'd never before at a piece of media. Everything just hit me all at once and I really did cry a lot, and after that happened I was just so profoundly changed by it that I knew I needed to explain what about this game had impacted me so deeply and why it's such an incredible experience. I think that parts of this game are also heavily elevated by the music. Now look, I don't know much about music theory, but the music in this game is incredible. How there's a gentle build-up of music whilst approaching the Everdor, as it increases in intensity more and more, amplifying your emotions in the scene, before then crescendoing at the end where the spirit passes over, in a way that's just so beautiful, and is a huge factor in what makes these scenes and moments more impactful. In fact, each spirit also has their own theme, which play at key moments for them, like Gwen's nostalgic yet quaint one, that plays during her reflection on memories in her parents' mansion, and Alice's theme, which has an old-timey and longing feeling to it, as though the happy times are over but the memories live on. And I think this song perfectly captures Alice's positive and bright attitude, and really suits her character. The spirit's themes do strongly elevate these important moments, and really makes it all the more emotionally impactful, and without it the game wouldn't be the same. On the ship you find Alice's spirit flower, and with that it allows you to reach the next area of the game by upgrading your ship, to allow you to smash through the rocks. Anyway, I want to dive into some of the other plot lines of spirits that still have a good impact to them. However, due to time constraints I can't mention them as in depth as the other spirits. The first is Summer. Summer's whole plotline revolves around taming dragons, seemingly being linked to them in some way, being very spiritual and even meditating with Stella in a really calming and peaceful moment. And over the course of the game, the dragon takes a toll on her, as she's stuck sleeping for days, to which you have to improve her house to allow her to wake up. After confronting another dragon, you speak to Summer and she says that she thought she and the dragon could coexist, but it's getting stronger, and says it's time for her to go, and asks you to take her to the Everdor. And you then take her to the Everdor and let her go. Now to stop this getting repetitive, I'm not going to go over the full Everdor scene, but it's really impactful and it's sad to hear. Saying how she thought it could be tamed and how she was certain it was calming down, and saying how the dragon was too indomitable. Summer's plotline is really tragic as it gives you hope that she's going to get better, only for it to not work, as she loses her battle with the dragon. Now the dragon is meant to represent something else, however I'll talk more about that later on. Summer is one of the most overlooked spirits, being on the ship for a short amount of time and taking a back seat to other characters' stories. However, I feel there's something so special and sad about Summer's story, even if it doesn't stand out as much as the others. Then there's Atul, a beacon of joy throughout this game, and Atul is actually the spirit you spend the most time with, as his storyline goes on for a long time. Atul is a pillar of stability and familiarity throughout the game, as he stays with you for so long, being so happy and joyous, and for a while it seems like he may never leave, making it hurt all the more when he passes on. Atul is the uncle of Stella, and throughout the game you get a sense for just how much he loves his family, but he also loves food, leading you to do a quest where you gather the favourite food of each spirit, and host a dinner party with Atul. Atul thanks Stella and then thanks everyone for coming, and says how it feels like a real family dinner, and how he feels like part of everyone's family, before then thanking Stella with everyone being so happy and cheerful. And this moment really feels happy, like a cherished memory. However, it then ends and you return to the boat. The next day you speak to one of the spirits and you realise that Atul is missing, before then going into his room and seeing a spirit flower where he slept, and later in the sky a constellation of him, and you realise that Atul has passed on, without you even knowing. This is really impactful as it represents just how sudden and quick death can happen. Sometimes there isn't a build-up, and people can tragically die at any moment, and the pain from feeling Atul being ripped away so suddenly, especially after bonding with him so heavily over the game, hurts more than most others in the game. This death also stands out from the rest as it subverts your expectations by not taking Atul to the Everdor, and instead having him disappear suddenly, making it harder to process what had happened. After Atul leaves, the ship feels off, like the last pillar of familiarity and warmth had left the ship. Or at least it would feel like that if it wasn't for one other character, that being Astrid. Now Astrid's story is not only incredibly long, but it also ties in with another character, Giovanni. We first meet Astrid organising a workers' strike against the CEO of a company, which she helped negotiate before then Astrid joins the ship, and reveals herself to be a lioness. She's very friendly towards Stella, and is a great part of the ship, and we learn more about her and what she stands for around protecting workers from being exploited. Astrid then reunites with an old friend and learns that her old lover Giovanni is somewhere, and now your mission from here is to help Astrid and Giovanni meet once again. So after a long hunt you finally find him in a snowy town, where he gives you the nickname Peanut, and Stella then says about Astrid, to which Giovanni joins the ship. He's also a lion, and Astrid and Giovanni can finally be reunited. It's really sweet and wholesome seeing them together around the ship and how cozy the house looks. Things are then fine for a long while as you bond with them and get to know them more, like bonding with Giovanni over the comet shower. However, things then take a turn as Astrid tells Stella that something's wrong, and asks Stella to check for Giovanni around the boat, and so you do and see him disappear. You talk to Astrid the next morning and her suspicions were correct, with Giovanni then getting a letter to meet someone at night in the town of Oxbury. So you go there and follow Giovanni, and confirm to Astrid that Giovanni was cheating on her, to which her, feeling upset and vindicated, kicks out Giovanni, to which he then goes to live in the lounge. However, it's not enough, and feeling he has overstayed his welcome, Giovanni asks to be taken to the Everdor. You approach as the water begins to turn red and the spirits gather round to see off Giovanni. Now look, I'm gonna spare you the whole death spiel to stop it getting repetitive, but he says that the second he saw Stella he knew that she was special, and begins to really compliment her, saying she does the right thing, and then reflects on Astrid and how good she was, before then saying it takes guts to be a Spiritfarer and take people to their end, and how he has so much faith in her, and how he'll always believe in her. He then says the ones that really love you never leave you, and that he regrets nothing except for leaving Astrid and leaving Stella, and how he wishes he could have seen her grow up more before then. You return once again to a strange land of stars and glowing platforms, where you find a spot to play music, which awakens old memories of someone's life, showing someone moving into an apartment. As you go through more, you see the constellations of the spirits behind you, before then you reach another memory, showing a sick person in bed with someone by their side, and then another one, showing two people together on a bridge. However, you go up further and they say a lot of vague and cryptic things before then saying it's implied this creature is the manifestation of death in some form, and says how Stella and the spirits' lives are intertwined, and talks more about Stella and the spirits, before then saying, are they saying their farewells or are you saying yours, and that Stella isn't ready yet and that they will meet again for the last time. You then return to your ship and see Giovanni's spirit flower on the place he used to sleep. After this, Astrid is pretty lost, with the request saying to let her live her best life for the next few days. And after waiting, she speaks to Stella, and says how she's so tired and old, and tells Stella to bring her to the Everdoor. This feels similar to what happened with Atoll, as Astrid is on the ship for so long and has such a deep connection with Stella, and so it does feel bad to let go of such an important character. So you take her to the Everdoor, everyone there watching her depart from the ship, and as you row towards the Everdoor she begins to say it's not why she lived as long as she did, and she then goes on to say that life is suffering, and it's hard, but you have to find reasons to keep going, and that she doesn't regret the hardships or the pain and sorrow she's seen, but after all that she's still proud of how she lived, but wishes the world was a better place, especially for Stella, and how her memories will live on through her. You then reach the Everdoor and you then return to the ship and find her spirit flower. Astrid and Giovanni are one of the saddest stories in the game, as they're two people with such unique personalities and stories, and it really makes you feel connected with them, as you get involved in their antics and learn more about their lives. Just like Atoll, they were a pillar of stability for the ship, a familiar face you'd see around, but after Astrid goes the ship feels different and empty, as now so many people have come and gone it just doesn't feel the same. The majority of buildings on the ship are now empty houses, with their residents long gone, and the warm faces you once recognised now only seen in constellations. This game perfectly depicts death and grief as these characters affect you long after they're gone, just like the stars they're represented by. Each thing on the ship can remind you of them, all of it making for such an evocative and emotional experience. Now all of these other characters I would have liked to dive into more heavily, and there's so many more I didn't cover because honestly it would make this video so much longer, but hopefully you can see the depth and richness this game holds, in portraying different personalities, stories and even deaths, and how all of these people you meet make for such an emotional experience. Okay, now back to Omori. After this, in the real world, Kel and Hiro stay overnight at Sunny's for a sleepover, in order to make the most out of the time they have left before Sunny moves away. After a disturbing time in Headspace, Sunny wakes up in the middle of the night, with you being able to hear the distant sound of piano playing, with Kel still sleeping and Hiro missing. You walk throughout the house with the sound of piano still being heard playing throughout, getting closer and closer as you approach the piano room where you then enter. You see Mari playing the piano, the moonlight beaming down on her as she then speaks to Sunny, saying the reason she chose this song for their last recital, but Sunny always hated it, hated how she would practice it so much and how eager Sunny was to play with her, with his new violin, and says how she might have pushed Sunny too hard and apologises, saying she just wanted it to be perfect. She then says how they were never able to play that last recital, and asks if Sunny wants to play it with her now until Hiro enters as Mari disappears as you snap back to reality, yet Hiro says he swore he could hear music, and then says how Sunny must miss Mari a lot, and how hard it's been on him too. He then tells Sunny to go back to bed, and upon leaving and re-entering the room you see Hiro at the piano, crying. This moment is really emotional as we once again see how much Sunny misses her and the bond and care they had for each other, with him desperately wanting her to be there again, wishing he could hear her play one last time. This also once again uses the ghostly representation of Mari, like we see in the Lost Library and the water scene, yet this time it's in Sunny's house and it feels more grounded and attached to reality than the other moments, making it all the more impactful. We also get to hear how it affected Hiro too, and watching him crying to Mari's piano is just so harrowing to see. The next morning it begins with a more uplifting and positive vibe, as Hiro has done all of Sunny's chores, and Kel and Hiro made breakfast for all three of them to enjoy, contrasting the melancholy of the night before. After this you head to Aubrey's house to confront her about her bullying of Basil, where you learn how she wanted to keep hold of the photos of Mari due to that being all she had left of her, but you make amends with Aubrey, and begin to replace all the photos in the photo album, with it again being really sad to look back on at all the fun times they had before she died, as the song in the background adds to the emotions as it's associated with Mari throughout the game, seeing photos that are the same as the ones in Headspace, implying how Sunny is so desperate to hold on to them that they even make their way into Headspace. After this, Kel, Hiro and Aubrey are all now in your party, just like in Headspace, and for a moment it begins to feel okay again, and after all the misery you've seen in the real world so far due to Sunny's depression, this brief moment of light by having everyone reunited again feels really heartwarming. After this, because of it being Sunny's last day, you can go anywhere around faraway town to make the most of it, with one of the places that you can go to being Mari's grave. You approach with a beam of light shining on her grave as you read it saying the sun shined brighter when she was here, before then giving you the option to place flowers on her grave, as Aubrey begins to speak to Mari, with Kel asking if she visits often, with her saying she tries to but some days it's hard, with the others then talking about how often they visit, with Kel trying his best to, and with this being Hiro's first time visiting Mari's grave due to his grief and depression over her death. He speaks to her saying how he was selfish to not visit her and says how much he misses her every day, before then placing flowers on her grave as a gift from all of them. You then are given the option, do you want to have a picnic with Mari? And so you do. There's just something so harrowing and sad seeing this scene that I can't help but tear up watching it. Seeing this group of friends who all were hit so hard by this loss in different ways have a picnic with someone they love so dearly is so sad, with picnics being something strongly associated with Mari as she sits on the picnic blanket in Headspace, and we see photos of her organising them with everyone there as friends all happy together, with the picnic basket also being something used to represent that great sadness of Mari's death, as in Headspace we see the picnic basket full of food, yet in the real world it's empty and barren. This moment represents the idea of love from beyond the grave. Things aren't the same as they used to be, but they can still find some light in it, and there's something really beautiful about that. Throughout this scene it also plays Mari's song By Your Side but slowed, representing that change due to her death, but with the structure of the song being the same, showing her love for Sunny and everyone else hasn't changed, and no matter what she'll always be by their side. Another thing that links to Mari and has huge emotional weight is the white egret orchid flower, a flower seen throughout the game like in the Lost Library and also by Mari's grave, which we see in the picnic scene. It's meant to symbolise in the language of flowers, my thoughts will follow you into your dreams, linking both to Mari being in Headspace but also how she'll always be by his side. And there's another detail that makes this game so emotional. Later on that day they go back to the secret woods area that they all used to play in, before Mari died and when they were all friends, with all the scrap and left behind toys giving a sad feeling, like everything was cut short too soon and they never went back. However, here you can have another picnic, where despite missing Mari and Basil it feels warm, yet with that bittersweet feeling that this game is all too familiar with, as there is also the white egret orchid flower here, making this even more impactful. Towards the end of the day everyone returns to Sunny's house, to see the old treehouse they used to hang out in, with Sunny being nervous to enter the backyard. You then approach a tree stump, where Kel says this is where Mari, before cutting himself off as they all talk about what happened that day, and how they were meant to watch Mari and Sunny's music recital that night, with Kel then saying he still doesn't know why she would do it, as you realise that Mari took her own life, and there's such a poignant and harrowing feeling you get from this, seeing the sadness and grief they all feel and learning the truth of her death, something the game waits a long time to reveal, making this hit even harder. After this you enter the treehouse, with it being decayed and weathered with age, yet some part of it feels deeply nostalgic and home-like, with the song representing this feeling perfectly, as everyone excitedly relives the old memories of a happy time now gone. You then pick up a very aged and weathered photograph of everyone there being so joyous and excited in the treehouse, but giving a really bittersweet feeling, with it saying on the back, don't forget it's in the toy box, and giving Sunny a key to it. Sunny's friends then see the photo and realise it's the last one missing from the photo album, and so you replace the last photo and go through the photo album one last time. This scene has another layer of sadness due to the fact that Sunny will be moving away, leaving this treehouse and all of its happy and sad sad memories behind. The reason why I want to focus so heavily on this final day is because it so perfectly captures all the bittersweet moments this game has. You revisit all of these happy moments, yet they're layered with the sadness of Mori's death, with this last day hitting you with moment after moment that are just so heartbreaking and is a part of where this game's writing and messaging really shine through. One of the most tragic and sad parts of this game is learning about all of the different responses to Mori's death, and how that influences the story. Like with Aubrey after leaving the treehouse, she stands by the stump where Mori did it, saying how alone she felt when everyone drifted apart, but realizing she pushed everyone away, saying how Sunny and Basil became more closed off, Kel made friends playing sports, and Hero was away studying, with her being angry at how everyone moved on, not realizing everyone was just dealing with the pain their own ways. She then talks about Basil and how she went to his house, and looked at his photo album, wanting to see everyone happy again, but Basil blacked out all of the photos, explaining why we see her bullying him so much throughout the real world segments. Earlier in the game we also learn how Hero handled Mori's death, where when visiting Mori's grave, Kel says after she passed, Hero stopped caring about everything, and stopped taking care of himself, being consumed by grief and depression for an entire year, leading to an outburst at Kel, where afterwards he began to get better. And learning about the different ways they were all affected by it is really heartbreaking to see, and this is also significant to other aspects of the game. At the start of the game you are taught the emotion system that you use in combat, where you're given a helpful diagram showing how the emotion system works, and you see each of the 4 main party members represent a different emotion. Hero sad, Kel happy, and Aubrey angry, with neutral and Mori in the centre, with these emotions being assigned to each character representing the response to Mori's death. Hero being sad as he was in a severely depressed state mourning the loss of Mori, Kel being happy as he moved on and made new friends through sports, leaving Aubrey angry and feeling alone, as she felt so frustrated that everything had moved on so fast. Then Omori being represented by neutral, represents how he escaped away instead of confronting her death. Now I want to cover the final part of the game, the part I've been building up to the whole time and the saddest and most emotional part of the game, and the whole reason I wanted to include this game as part of this video due to how it made me cry. After visiting the treehouse they all return to Basil's house, yet he doesn't want to leave his room, and so everyone has a sleepover, where Sunny falls asleep and returns to Whitespace, yet here he plays Sunny and not Omori, as throughout Headspace Sunny takes on the persona of Omori to escape from the world, yet here with Sunny now regaining his friendship and starting to try to move on, he is now separated from Omori, which is the version of him wanting to escape from everything, with Omori just standing there not moving, and so Sunny then grabs the light bulb, sending Omori into a fight with the Something, a creature we see throughout Headspace and acts as a source of horror throughout the game. The Something drags Sunny deeper into the shadows, with it changing its forms to be all the different variations of it from throughout the game, like the Handstare monster and the Spider monster and the vines from underwater, with Sunny throughout using his abilities to stay calm and composed in order to confront the darkest part of his psyche, yet it then shows a swaying figure blurry in view, with the text saying, "Something swayed in the wind," and that he feels his life is in danger, with the figure now being revealed as a lifeless woman, with Sunny using his abilities to try to overcome this, but it relentlessly attacks, sending Sunny into a state of panic and trembling, yet he keeps persisting, allowing his breathing and heartbeat to steady, as he then uses the ability Overcome. Sunny then goes into the light, as you enter a beautiful forest area with an almost heavenly glow to it, as you enter through gates and collect photos, and you then reach the end of the path, where you see Basil, who says he dreams Sunny would come back for him, and then says that the truth of that day will be hard to accept, but he has to stay strong when he sees it, and if he can, to try to forgive him, before then giving Sunny a photo album, and moving to let him enter the tree. Now from here you enter one of the darkest sections of this game, in which you go through a twisting and disturbing retelling of the day that Mori died, in which you gather photos all giving pieces of the true story of what happened, and this is such a good aspect of the game, because you build this strong positive and warm connotation with a photo album, only for it to be subverted with a dark and twisted truth. Now I already went in depth on this part in my last video, so I'll only cover the ending part of this sequence. You make it to the end of a dark red forest, and see a tree with a rope coming off it, and the last photo you need to collect, and finally you see the full story of what happened the day that Mori died, a photo of Sunny's broken violin, then showing Sunny and Mori arguing atop the stairs, and then what looks like him pushing her as she falls, then lying there lifeless at the bottom of the stairs. Sunny runs down and with the help of Basil drags her up the stairs and puts her in bed, trying to wake her up, yet she doesn't do anything, leaving Sunny consumed by despair and guilt, as him and Basil realise that she's dead, with it being so harrowing to see this, and so to conceal the truth the two take her outside to a tree in the garden, grabbing a skipping rope, and then... This part is just so disturbing and unsettling to witness, but I don't think Sunny pushed her intentionally, with the photos conveying just how awful and guilty they feel, and by having the photos be from Basil's perspective it makes you feel more present in this traumatizing occurrence. After learning the truth about this though, everything begins to fall into place, as the final photo reveals that the something is a personification of the guilt of the truth of Mori's death, and this adds a lot of emotional depth to the game as you now understand why certain things happened, like why it was so hard for Sunny to go down the stairs at the start of the game, and how the guilt of pushing Mori manifested itself, and why Sunny became a hikikomori and took to escaping to a world where everyone was together and happy, because he desperately didn't want to confront the truth of that day. Basil is one of OMORI's saddest characters, witnessing and assisting the cover-up of Mori's death, and his relationship with Sunny and the rest of his friends acts as a point of great importance to the narrative as a whole. Now I've already talked about Basil throughout this video, like the cutscene of Basil looking at the photo album, but I feel now that I've covered the full truth of the game I can finally explain what makes the moments with Basil so emotional. But the main thing to know is that Sunny and Basil were best friends. Basil witnessed Mori's death firsthand, and later helped carry her outside, and while Sunny escaped away for 4 years, Basil couldn't, and was forced to bear that guilt and grief by himself, as the only one who could know and confront the truth of what happened, which really makes you feel sad for him. We're shown the relationship since the very first cutscene in the opening of the game, where we now know this is after Mori's death, where we see Basil trying to comfort Sunny while he's crying, saying that it'll be okay and saying, no matter what happens, promise me that we'll always be there for each other. But Sunny doesn't look like he's listening or even responding, with this part being referenced in the truth sequence. Now Basil is constantly shown as being distant from Sunny, with cutscenes like this being sprinkled throughout the game, with parts like seeing hallucinations of Basil and Sunny at the lake, which give the idea that Basil is important to Sunny, and his mind is trying to show him this, with this being evident in Headspace 2, as Basil goes missing, causing them to spend the whole game trying to find him, with Basil being represented by the stranger we see throughout, distant from the party, with this representing the disconnect between the two, and how through Sunny's repression of the truth he's lost connection with Basil, now only seeing him as a stranger, a shadow with no substance, a reminder of his pain, something evident by the awkwardness and uncomfortability we see in their real world interactions, like there's so much they're both holding back, an interaction you wouldn't expect from two close friends, but you would expect from two strangers, showing how they grew distant after Mori's death. Sunny escaped away, leaving Basil to bear the guilt alone, and this makes the game as a whole even more emotional to look back on, as these two friends who were so close are now lost and broken. But one of the saddest moments with Basil comes towards the end of the game, after going through the emotional rollercoaster of learning Mori's death, and seeing the tragic life they all live now, and beginning to realise the true nature of Headspace. You return to Basil's flower garden, and see him talking about his flowers, now withered and decayed, yet each flower patch holds significance to each of Basil's friends. The sunflowers representing what Basil wants to be like, seeing the bright side of things, then the lily of the valley, which wards off evil spirits leading to a brighter future, representing Mori and her positive outlook, the roses representing Hero being universally loved, the sword flower and its strength of character representing Aubrey and how she is true to herself, the cacti's strength and resilience, being the only plant Kel could take care of, and you then see the stranger talking about the white tulips, and how they aren't flashy or too big or small or too flamboyant, but he says they're comfortable, simple, modest and perfect just like Sunny. He then looks at Omori and walks off. This moment is just such an emotional gut punch, because you see how much Basil cares for his friends, and how much he values them, and so knowing Aubrey went on to bully him and Mori died, and he just became so alone makes this scene just so sad. And the fact that he idolises and appreciates Sunny so much in this scene is also really sad, as Sunny escaped away, and they aren't as close anymore, being broken by the trauma of that day, making this scene just so heartbreaking, and I really teared up whilst playing it. The thing is though, at the start of the game, a whole 15 hours of playtime before this scene, Basil talks through the flowers just like this in person, yet when he gets to the tulips he says Omori and not Sunny, showing that this scene later at the end is the true Basil, talking about the true Sunny, and not as escapist persona of Omori, and we see later that these flowers exist in real life too, adding immensely to the emotional impact of this scene. Now all of this is important to know, because not only is it insanely emotionally resonant, but it also is vital to understanding the ending of the game. But before that I want to talk about Before Your Eyes. Benny is now driving on the highway seeing billboards of his art show, with your art teacher telling you the world is wondering about his next work.
How we all love a rising star, and how bored we become once it's settled. Keep rising, Benjamin.
You're then in your apartment drawing, and there's a voicemail from your mother.
Just calling to inform you that I went to the doctor today, and well, I'm gonna be a little sick for a while.
So you pick up the phone and...
Oh, Benny, I told you not to pick up. There's nothing you can do for me right now. All you can do is just keep painting, keep striving.
You get the feeling she's hiding something from Benny, and doesn't want her being sick to distract him from painting. However, you then blink and...
What? That's enough from me.
You slowly blink to reveal more parts of the scene, showing a casket and a photo of Benny's mother as you realise that she's dead, and this is her funeral. Benny is then invited onto the stage.
Benny? You ready to come up here?
Your heart pounding, trying to process this, you look around as Benny's dad encourages him to speak, yet he says nothing.
What's wrong? Why aren't you talking?
After this, Benny's consumed by grief, not talking to his teacher for 6 months, as he gets angrier and angrier.
You are a snake. You are a fraud. But worst of all, Benjamin, you are a little tease.
As Benny keeps painting his mother to try to process this grief, yet his art teacher says how he told the world Benny's silence was because he was making his greatest piece. However, he hasn't worked on anything, and now...
The world has forgotten you, Benjamin. They have moved on. And I have moved on too.
Things get worse as Benny's father calls saying he's selling the house.
I think I'm selling the house. She's everywhere here, son.
And he seems pretty broken and lost, and it's also harrowing.
I hope you understand.
This part of the game really got to me. I remember tearing up a lot whilst playing it, because it was so jarring to go from that high of taking over the world as an artist, only to be crushed back down to reality to confront the death of Benny's mother. And afterwards it's deeply depressing to see how his life begins to fall apart due to the grief he and his father are feeling. It also really makes you long for those moments where you could be with her again, before she died. And the fact you spend the whole game up to now getting to know her, really makes this death feel real and powerful. And the fact you placed in the perspective of Benny makes it so that you feel this loss as though it was your own mother, and it's a really sad part of the game. Yet there's still way more to this game, and way more tears left to be shed. You're back at your parents' house after a while of being away, and now you're sorting through items from your childhood, and if you want to keep it or not due to the house being sold. You see items like the boat, a metronome, and then...
I know she told you not to pick up the phone, but... Well, I'm just so happy that you did.
It's her music manuscripts. The next scene then lets you paint in your apartment, the music changing to a more upbeat tone as you begin to paint tranquil horizons, yet also now taking inspirations from photos of Benny's now gone mother, as he transforms his grief into art through painting. Benny then shows his father.
It's unbelievable, Benny. It's like she's standing in the room with us. Like I can see her in the paint.
And it really touches him. And so this painting gets unveiled at Benny's art exhibition, and through this painting his mother's music is now finally recognised. But then...
Is that really you? It's Chloe.
After so long, you're reunited with Chloe, who has really enjoyed the art showcase, as Benny takes her through every photo.
Her childhood, I was living next to a bona fide genius. I always heard her playing piano from next door, but I didn't know she wrote the actual music. She was a genius.
She then has to get a drink with Benny afterwards before then.
Catch up. I can't believe everything that's happened to you. I want to hear all about it.
Now would you look at that?
You are now back on the ship, with the wolf celebrating excitedly with you forcefully being snapped out of revisiting Benny's memories.
Nobody, nothing's dying every day. You finally sink your hook into a... Whoa!
He's so glad to finally have got a worthy spirit, and talks about all the people he's met.
Scientists, a couple college athletes here or there.
But Benny...
Internationally renowned painter? The gatekeeper's gonna eat you up.
And so in preparation for this, he asks to do a test run of the story, where you also help him choose what wording to use. And so you begin to recount the story of Benny's life.
Gatekeeper! Before you stands the soul of a great man.
He then asks if you would describe yourself as a happy kid or a lonely one, and throughout this you get to choose how the story's told. And there isn't really a correct option, more just how you interpret all the memories you saw of Benny, as the wolf retells your story, approaching the gate further and further. Benny's upbringing is a lonely child in a seaside town, the son of a great composer, who took a job as an accountant to help her family.
Therefore, as his piano teacher, she was over-demanding, forcing him to practice day in and day out.
The friendship of Chloe.
Music became the only thing he truly cared about, even more than his best friend Chloe.
And then talks about Benny's career as an artist, taking the world by storm.
That he began work on what would ultimately be considered his masterpiece.
Yet whilst telling this story, the bird seemed to go crazy.
All right! I get it! I hear what you're saying.
As the door to the tower opens. He then explains that these birds aren't regular birds. They're liar birds. Souls that tried to lie to the gatekeeper and aren't allowed near the gate again. There's an awkward silence as you enter the tower with the birds flying off. Surely you haven't lied on what you said, right? Everything you told was the truth. You saw it yourself before your own eyes. You then begin to ascend the tower, with everything going dark.
Now don't think that I haven't dealt with people like you. You're ashamed of something. Something so terrible, you're trying to blink right past it.
He accuses Benny of horrible things, but then gives Benny one last chance to start from the very beginning.
And this time, I want the truth.
And so you blink. This part of the game is really something special. First, you finally have the resolution of Benny's grief through the art piece, and finally reconnecting with Chloe. Yet this joy is short-lived due to the interruption from the ferryman, with this feeling like you've snapped out of a long dream. This part of the game is also really amazing as you get a chance to reflect on the life you've lived so far. Yet the game is far from over, and now you go into the saddest part of the game. The true part of this game. The part of the game that makes it so special, and the only part of any game that had made me truly cry my eyes out after I finished playing it. And that is the true memories of Benjamin Bryn. You're once again back on the beach and get to see Benny's mother again after so long, with the ferryman wanting you to skip through most things.
Come on, keep blinking. I haven't found it yet.
Yet you want to stay in these moments just to re-experience everything, and it gives it all a new perspective, as you appreciate these moments for a second time, after going through the grief of Benny losing his mother, and so seeing her and being able to spend time with her again is something that is so powerful, as you don't get to go and relive your memories with someone after they die. You don't have that second chance to go back and live in that moment, and so this part was so emotional to play through for those reasons, and also the fact that you go back to the simple nostalgia of early life, after all the highs and lows you've been through. After combing through more memories, you make it to the one with the phone call in the dark room, and now you're introduced to another mechanic, where you have to keep your eyes open for a certain amount of time in order to hear the phone call. I think this is a really great mechanic, as once again it gives you an active role in experiencing it. Anyway, you finally get to hear the phone call and...
Hello? Yes, of course. This is Elle, his daughter.
It seems like Benny must have blocked it out, and so you skip through more and more memories until you get to the one with the door. And again you use the same mechanic of keeping your eyes open and then you look through the door.
The death of those cats must have taught you a terrifying lesson. That simply being alive wasn't enough.
This part is really disturbing to see, but also this explains a lot of stuff we miss on the first time round. We now understand why Benny's mother became abrasive and gave up on piano for a while, because she was mourning the death of her father, and that's why we never see him visit. Same with why we never see the kittens after they were shown, and you begin to wonder if there's any other things that Benny has hidden from us. Whilst playing back through these memories, I found myself lingering in them way more than the first time going through them, wanting to just exist in those moments for longer to really take it all in, especially knowing the tragedy later on of Benny's mother dying and his father being struck by grief, and especially moments like the stay here scene hit all the more harder, as you want to stay there where everything is so still and perfect. You then get to the memory of Benny's parents talking at night time, and once again you keep your eyes open to hear the truth, and you get to the end of the corridor where it asks you to close your eyes.
I mean, what's the point?
What do you mean?
What's the point of any of it? If he's never gonna get any better?
Let's not say that. I mean, what if he heard?
I'd never forgive myself.
This moment really hit me with a really harrowing feeling, and this is where a lot of the game really makes you cry a lot.
I see. You got sick.
The music and visuals in this scene is so serene and calming. You don't want to leave as you process this major tragedy. You're now back on the boat again, with the ferryman talking about how sick Benny was.
Sicker than healthy kids are supposed to get?
Before then saying that no matter how painful it gets, he needs Benny to remember all of it.
We're almost at the end of this. I promise.
And this is where you learn the truth about the game. You're in bed, Benny's mother's saying to do something productive whilst off school. Benny then gets a typewriter.
Try writing with it. Well, hello, Benny.
And you learn more about it.
It was your grandfather's, but...
With her sharing more stories about her life before then, Benny asks what you should write about.
Why don't you write the story of your life so far?
as the room is consumed by shadow focusing in on the typewriter. And so late at night you begin working on it as Benny begins retelling his whole life story. Yet as more and more of it is written, it sounds awfully familiar. Awfully familiar to the very story you guided the ferryman through writing. Also here you once again use your eyes to interact with the world, this time using them to type by moving across the keys. The next memory shows Chloe reading through the story Benny wrote.
The only thing he truly cared about, even more than his best friend, Chloe.
And seems upset at Benny not meeting her on the beach.
Is that why you didn't sneak out with me? You do realize I waited for you out in the alley for like an hour, right?
Yet this warmth only lasts for so long as you then blink. You're doing a scan at a hospital, and it feels really intimidating and claustrophobic, and is extremely different from anything else we've seen so far in the game, as everything we've seen so far has been through the sanitized viewpoint of Benny, not wanting to confront the traumas of his life. Anyway, his mother then asks to read some of Benny's story. It then cuts to late at night, overhearing Benny's parents talking about his story.
Go in there and tell him you loved it.
I'm sorry, I just can't.
Benny's father then enters.
Mom loved your story. She's just, I think it was just very emotional for her to read.
And then later that night Benny writes more, saying how he's a loser, the worst of his family to ever live, and that he didn't even try to fight the disease inside him before then. A red light appears at the bottom of Benny's bed, before then it consumes the whole of the room, suffocating it with its glow.
Richard, get out!
As you hear the panic sounds of Benny's parents. After blinking, the red light is still there, but now with hospital IV drops and a stretcher before then. After this, Benny is now equipped with a button that gives him medicine upon pressing it if he's in pain, and you use this to make the red light go away, with Benny's room now having more and more medical equipment. This is honestly one of the saddest parts of any game I've played, and also such a well-crafted story. It's so heartbreaking to see someone so young be affected so severely both physically and emotionally by this disease, with it tearing his mother and father apart with grief and heartbreak. And it also explains so much about the game now. The ferryman is a representation of Benny writing his life story, living through words what he couldn't in reality due to his illness, and it explains why he constantly has to look through a dictionary to find the right words, as he only has the vocabulary of an 11-year-old. But there are still more questions left unanswered, and things only get way more tragic. Alright, now back to Spiritfarer. Honestly, back when I first played this game, I would tear up a lot at all these character deaths, and my first experience with this game was really different to any other game. After Gwen, I understood just how special this game was, and each spirit passing on was more emotional than the last. And since I didn't really cry much in my real life, I began to really appreciate the brief moments where this game allowed me to. However, eventually it just got too emotionally tiring to the point where I stopped playing, and so there I left it for 2 years, trying to get back into it on and off until earlier this year, where I replayed it all for this video, and it was even more emotional than I remembered, and I played further than I did previously and completed the game, and it had a huge impact on me. That is to say, this has all just been build up and establishing context for the true point of this section, the ending of Spiritfarer. The final area of the game is strange and weird with empty cliffs and everything suffocated with a thick blanket of fog. You don't know what's going on, but you get the sense that things are coming to an end as you traverse this windy yet barren landscape, and there's a real tonal shift from the other areas of the game. Anyway, after helping another spirit called Gustav move on, who I wasn't able to cover earlier, you again return back to the strange and starry land, and once again reveal a memory, this time showing people gathered round a bed. You keep going and reveal another memory, this time showing someone walking through a snowy forest, before then seeing one final memory of the same person now in a hospital bed surrounded by family, before then zooming out to reveal all 3 memories. You then are face to face with the owl, again saying why did Stella choose this life, choosing to usher people through their final moments and asking if she did it for them or for herself. With it then being revealed that this owl represents death, and implying that Stella is dead, and saying her mother and sister are with her, before then you go back to your ship and see a strange flower. She says she knows she's late, but she couldn't get out of work earlier and talks about parking, and asks if Stella is awake, and if she can hear her, and asks things only to be met with silence, wishing she could hear Stella's voice or her shouting or her laughing or even snoring. She then says that she's got Stella's photo album, with photos from all across her life, and so she starts from the beginning over a drink, before then it ends. When I first played through this, I instantly started tearing up, because it was just so sad to see her sister grieving, and there's such a huge feeling of warmth associated with this spirit, Lily. You see, with every other spirit you can only hug them once every day, yet with Lily you can hug her as much as you want, representing the bond between her and Stella, and she does for Stella what Stella has done for so many throughout the game, and Lily is now the one comforting Stella in her final moments. This part of the game basically implies that this world isn't real in some way, that these people aren't as real as we thought, but also that Stella is dying. She's the one in the memory we saw, and from how Lily talks about car parks and other real world things, we get the sense that this world isn't real, with this most likely being Stella's final moments, with Lily's words only barely making it through to her. This would explain the empty landscape and the misty fog surrounding the final area, with the developers themselves saying that this was intentional to show how death is close, and that the Spiritfarer's journey is almost over. However, there's still a lot that we don't know. If this world is fake, then who are the spirits? How are they able to know her? And that is revealed through Lily's questline, where you have to go to the Everlight upgrade shrines at night time in various cities where more is revealed. And so you go to the first one in Hummingberg. You see butterflies surround it before then you hear Lily speak, saying it's their annual visit to her Uncle Atul's house, and shows a joyful family dinner and Stella as a baby, before Lily talks about Atul and her mother being tired by Stella. She then turns to the next page, showing Stella and Gwen on a bicycle ride with Lily trailing behind, before then she reflects on nostalgic memories about Gwen. However, it then ends and you have to go to the next city. This part really makes me emotional. It's hard to describe the feeling of seeing such happy, simple and quaint photos, yet knowing the context that they're being shown to a dying Stella and narrated by a grieving Lily makes it really melancholic, with the mixture of emotions amplifying this emotional impact even more. Anyway, you head to the next town and interact with the shrine, where it shows you Stella with someone in a postcard, before Lily then reads out a message from Stella, talking about her trip and her travels and a new person she met, before then Lily talks about her father's deteriorating health, and how it was kept from Stella. You then go to the next shrine where it shows Stella moving into a Montreal apartment, with Lily talking about how bad it was, and then discussing how their father had died, and wondering how Stella deals with death working at a hospital for people at the end of their life, before then talking about the people she helped, like Summer, before then showing a photo of Summer, with Stella by her side, and saying she didn't go quickly, and that her cancer took its time, with it giving her hope but it then came back harsher, before then she moves on to Giovanni and Astrid, showing Stella by their side again, with Lily saying how they were like grandparents to her, and how intense the stories were, and even though Giovanni cheated, Astrid was by her side at the end, even when she had moved on. You then head to the next shrine, where it shows Stella walking through a forest alone, with Lily saying about the phone call Stella had with her. Stella took a few months off work after some bad news, and then Stella called her at 2 AM for Lily, her voice shaking, while she talked about the nature and that it was cold and felt like death. She then came home and told Lily and her mother about the diagnosis, before then showing Stella on the hospital bed, surrounded by her sister and mother, with Lily saying that if Stella can hear her, she loves her so much, and as it fades to darkness she says how Stella isn't alone anymore, and never has been, before you're then met with one final request: take Stella to the Everdoor. This part reveals to us so much about the game and its world, as we learn that every single spirit is actually a real person that Stella knew and bonded with, and stayed with them as a nurse till their very last moments. Stella spent her life surrounded by death and loss, and still managed to live with such hope and joy right up until the very end, and the fact that this whole world is one huge allegory for her life and death is just so beautiful, with each area being a part of her life. Her upbringing in France being represented by the first area in Hummingberg, her travels in Japan and meeting Gustav being represented by the second area, and the third area representing her busy move to the bustling city of Montreal. And as her journey draws to a close, she makes it to the final area, a land of dense wilderness and fog, representing that fateful phone call to her sister with death closing in. This part also really made me cry, as most of the deaths in the actual game feel detached from reality in some sense, especially given how they're all animals, and also how whimsical and escapist the world you're in is. Yet then you play this part and you see the real people, the human people, with their real lives and real issues and real deaths to real conditions, and it hits all the more harder for a second time and makes it all deeply sad as it now becomes grounded in reality. You head off to the Everdoor, a silence growing as the boat sails with Lily by Stella's side, before then the ocean turns red and the sky lights up as you get closer to the Everdor with the beautiful white nature in the background. However, before you depart you see something, a ghostly representation of Gwen, who you can hug once again after all this time. You head up and see another ghostly representation of Atul and Astrid and Giovanni, and every other spirit you've said goodbye to across your journey, and you hug each one of them as a last goodbye. And this part of the game is so emotional as you can say goodbye to them for one last time. After saying goodbye you hug Lily, and get in the rowboat with Lily's butterflies there to accompany, as Stella sets off for the Everdor. Daffodil clings onto Stella as she slowly rows gently through the red water with Lily's butterflies close behind, the nature with beautiful gorgeous white foliage, and on this voyage Stella is silent as you begin to reflect on your whole journey, the times of joy with Atul and Gwen, the tragic losses you've had to endure, the extreme events and battles with dragons where the world looks surreal and unrecognisable, and the light Stella brought to everyone she was with and being with them until their very end, with hers now drawing near as she reaches the Everdor. Lily by her side as she gently rows into the centre with a look of acceptance. You then see Lily's butterflies fly off as Stella hugs Daffodil. Stella passes on, as it then shows a constellation forming of Stella and Daffodil, and that is Spiritfarer. The credits then play as the constellations of those you lost fade into view, and a memorial and loving memory of people the developers knew and inspired some of the spirits in the game. After a journey filled with light and hope and accompanying those to their final moments, Stella finally passes on surrounded by those she loves, as death finally consumes her. This part of the game with the music and visuals really made me just break down crying so much, as it's just so sad and beautiful, with the song itself being so emotional and evocative, with lyrics being about Stella and her journey and how she interacted with people. Not only does this game help portray death and grief with other people, but it also beautifully captures the hardships of life and holds a really amazing message that's seen throughout the game, and one that I can now properly go into now that you know about the ending, and that is the Everlight. The Everlight is Stella's main tool throughout the game, being able to take the form of various shapes, and is also upgraded throughout the game to allow Stella to use new abilities to traverse the landscape. However, we learn more about the Everlight from both Gwen and Charon. I think it really explains a lot of what this game is trying to convey in its symbolism. At the start of the game, Charon describes the Everlight as the symbol of her status here, and will be the light shining in the darkness, and the last remaining hope for the departed, before then talking about the significance of hope, and how the fate of lost souls rest on Stella's shoulders. Then Gwen's explanation of the Everlight tells us it's what reveals stray spirits. The Everlight can also be upgraded at various shrines through the use of obols. You get obols each time you bond enough with a spirit, or as the game describes, the mark of a passage paid in full. I think this is an intentional choice to convey the message of the game, as it's through the strong bond Stella has with the spirits that makes her light stronger. Then also at the Everdor, Gwen says about Stella giving her light, and there's a lot of light imagery associated with Stella coming from the word constellation, because in the real world that's who she was. She gave people light and gave people hope as a nurse for people at the end of their life. Through her bonds with people she got stronger and gave light to people even until the very end. It's through those shrines at the end of the game that we see the true story of her life, as it shows how important giving light and hope was to her identity. The game also has a very cyclical nature, starting at the Everdor, the Alpha where everything starts, the Omega where everything ends, with Stella accompanying the previous Spiritfarer as they pass on, and then ending it in the same place, but this time Stella is the one passing on, showing that death is inevitable, giving both a sad and comforting message. So what's the overall message of this game? Well, I think it tries to tell us that someday we will die, and everyone we know will too. But instead of presenting death as a scary concept, it makes it comforting, it makes it human. We're all on a journey towards the Everdor, so should we spend that time scared? Well, Spiritfarer argues that we should fill that time with light and with hope, that the bonds we form and the light we give, whether through art or through relationships, is what lives on beyond us. And so we should spend our time like that, not taking those around us for granted, and instead, like Stella, give people light and hope until their very end, and until yours. Overall, Spiritfarer as a game perfectly captures the feeling of grief and loss, through how it builds strong bonds between you and a varied cast of characters, only to take it away to make it painful, and uses things like their houses and activities they like to create a feeling of grief, as without Spiritfarer's vast and varied cast of characters, that you grow deep connections with as you learn their stories and their personalities, it would not be nearly as effective. These characters act as a spirited reflection of yourself and the people you know, as you begin to relate these spirits to people in your life, like friends, family or pets, making the moment of loss hit all the more intensely. This game is really sad. There were multiple times where I teared up editing, scripting and recording this, but this game also contains one of the most beautiful depictions of death seen in any game, and speaks to its message so powerfully, and contains the tragic punch of realism at the very end, that these are all real people, and real stories, and you could experience things just like this too. Spiritfarer teaches us that death happens, and it's okay to mourn and feel that loss, but you can still find light and make new connections, while still remembering those you lost along the way. Okay, now back to Omori. After learning the truth of Mori's death, Sunny wakes up and heads to Basil's room, where you're given the option to save Basil. So you say yes and enter his room. You see him staring out the window, and he speaks to Sunny with a nervous excitement, before then saying that when Mori fell, Sunny couldn't have done it, and it must have been something behind him, and that he knows Sunny is a good person, who wouldn't do something like that, and that after all this time, Sunny has finally came back for him, but tomorrow he'll be leaving. As he gets angry and approaches Sunny, Sunny tries to leave, but something blocks the door, and Basil says how he doesn't want to be left alone again, and saying that Sunny wouldn't do something like that, and it must have been something behind him, and saying that when something killed Mori and when something ruined all his photos, he didn't say anything so people wouldn't think it was Sunny, and saying he'll save him again and get rid of the something behind him once and for all, as they then enter battle. Sunny is deeply afraid as we see Basil being swallowed by his something, representing him being eaten alive by his guilt over what happened to Mori, with this battle being gruesome and gory and hard to play through, with this feeling so gut-wrenching watching these two former best friends now driven to fighting to relieve their traumas. Then midway through the fight we see a cutscene of Sunny, now insanely stressed out and struggling in a state of extreme panic, as the tone of the battle shifts, the attacks now being red and bloody until then. Sunny is hit in the eye as it goes dark, with the sound of both of them collapsing and sirens incoming. This fight is really heartbreaking and uncomfortable to play through, and the goriness and extremeness makes this fight stand out from all the others, and we learn about Basil's struggles, and how he liked Sunny so much he wanted to believe he couldn't do anything bad. Like Sunny, he didn't want to confront the truth, and we learn that it was actually Sunny who drew all over the photographs, yet Basil took the blame, causing him to spiral even further. You're back in Headspace once again, yet still as Sunny and not Omori, and the location being an empty version of Faraway Town, with Sunny then seeing Mori's cat Muo, and following it with the time and weather changing until you reach Sunny's house, where you see Basil standing out front. You talk and he apologises for any trouble he caused, and then says that all the pain they've been feeling and the guilt in their hearts, even if they try to bottle it up, it all comes out somehow, and says that everything will be okay, with no choice but to carry on, as he says Aubrey, Kel and Hero are good friends, and he has to trust that they will forgive the both of them, even if it's hard to truly believe, before then saying that the photos in their album aren't just photos, but real memories, proof of their friendship, as he then walks away before then. He hugs Sunny and says, "Let's make some new memories together, okay?" This scene is so perfect as it shows that despite everything that just happened, Sunny still cares deeply for Basil, and it's only now after confronting the truth and confronting Basil that he starts to see him as a person again, and not as a stranger, and after spending all of Headspace looking for him, he's finally found Basil. This also acts as a resolution to the photo album, culminating in the line, "They're proof of our friendship," as that's how they've been presented throughout the game, proving that they did have happy memories, and maybe they could have those again. Sunny then enters his house, where you see the text, "Don't forget it's in the toy box," as you see Sunny's house warm and fully furnished, and interacting with objects shows Sunny narrating his happy memories associated with them, as you see the house in the state it was before Mori died, when everything was so perfect, as you hear the distant playing of piano. You then enter the piano room. You see Mari playing the piano, the sunlight beaming down on her as she then speaks to Sunny, saying that it's almost time, and how he's been through a lot the last few days, saying that we all make mistakes, but he's been running from this one for a long time now, and whilst it may be tough he needs to forgive himself, before then saying to know that she'll always be watching over him, as long as he remembers her she'll be here. And so you leave the room and see a door that wasn't there before, or has it always been there? As Sunny enters, you see a box below a light bulb in a dark room, as it then shows Sunny standing over it, putting the key in the lock, and then opening it to reveal a broken and smashed violin with tattered sheet music, and a description saying how strands of long black hair are entangled in its strings, and the sheet music is wrinkled and bloody. You realise that after what happened to Mari, Sunny hid this away, repressed that the room was even there, and locked it away in the darkest part of his mind. And another detail here that's just so sad and made me tear up is the description of Mari's bed, saying how he would sleep in Mari's bed when he had nightmares. And whilst it is a small detail, it has huge emotional weight as it tells us so much about Mari's caring nature, and you feel that grief in knowing that she's gone and how they'll never have that again. You then exit the house and reach Memory Lane, a vast highway with rain and street lamps, as Sunny wanders down as a lamp flickers on, as Sunny basks in its light, being transported to a memory of him and his friends in the treehouse, playing a card game, with this moment having such warmth and nostalgia, and is way more evocative than the photo albums, as you are now directly part of the memory, not just gazing at a still photo. As you see Basil taking photos of everyone together, you then leave the memory as it says, "The violin mended a part of itself." You go through various other memories, all of them having a deep emotional resonance to them. As you see this happiness and nostalgia, everything's so simple and quaint as you see the lives and dynamics these friends had, each time the violin mending itself more and more due to the reflecting on these memories, and Sunny remembering what he needs to fight for and gaining strength through it. This all culminates in one final memory. Snow falls around as you go into the light, as Mari's theme begins to play, as you see that it's Christmas, with everyone so joyful and celebratory, with everyone pitching in to get Sunny one amazing present, saving up the entire year to make it happen, as they all talk about the lengths they had to go through to pay for it, with it being Basil's idea to get him a new violin. Sunny unwraps it as it then shows him opening it, his friends standing around as they look at him excitedly, as it then shows the photo of Sunny playing the violin, and saying that Sunny remembered the anxious feeling as he played the first note on his new violin, but he didn't mind it because his friends believed in him, and no matter what he didn't want to disappoint them because they were his friends. Then saying the violin regained its shape, and this moment made me tear up a lot for the same reason the rest of this sequence did, as then Sunny, remembering those warm and cherished memories, giving him a reason to keep fighting, enters the room at the end of Memory Lane. You see an auditorium, with Hero, Aubrey and Kel gathered round as they then face Sunny, with Aubrey saying that after this it's going to be up to him, as she says before they even met she had trouble fitting in. Even after being friends with them she assumed they would all leave her, but Sunny always seemed to have time for her, as Kel then says whilst they may have missed out on each other the last few years, it doesn't have to stay that way. Hero then says to put a little trust in them, and Kel says just because he's done something bad doesn't make him bad, with Hero saying how Sunny has had to live with this pain for so long, keeping it inside, and whilst it might be easier to ignore your problems, it's okay to cry about them too, and saying that life will get better, and Sunny's the one to make it happen, as they switch from the younger versions to their older real world versions, showing how their bond has lasted all this time, and letting Sunny know that what happens next is up to him, as he heads for the stage, and with Mari's picnic basket being here symbolically referencing how she's watching over Sunny still, and how she's positioned next to Hero, Aubrey and Kel to look like part of the group, is so sweet, and links back to the "My thoughts will follow you into your dreams" message that's linked to her, with this moment being so emotional. The room goes monochrome as his friends disappear, as Sunny places his sheet music and is ready to play. It shows a large yet empty auditorium, as Sunny begins to play the violin. Yet at the end he falls down, crying and empty. Sunny is then sent back to white space, somehow even more empty than before, as he sees Omori standing there, as it then shows him ready to attack, as you enter battle against Omori. Now this battle is one that's really powerful, but also really long, but one of the greatest parts of this battle is its symbolism. Omori, the personification of his escapism, guilt and mental illness, the one keeping him behind, the one keeping him constantly pulling inward, fighting against Sunny who wants to live again and be free of the guilt in his heart. Throughout the battle the tone gets darker and darker, the background turning red and grotesque, with Omori speaking the voice of Sunny's guilt, saying how everyone loved Mari and he killed her, as a disturbing representation of Mari appears in the background, as Omori delivers one final blow to Sunny. You then have the option to continue or give up, and so you choose to continue, seeing Sunny grabbing and readying his violin, with the red background fading away as he stands up and begins to play. Piano music begins playing softly as you see Mari at the piano, Sunny by her side with his violin. As you see Sunny and Mari growing up together, how Mari would love and comfort him, how she would protect him after nightmares, and how they would get older and new friends would join them like Hero and Kel, and then how they would meet Aubrey, who was sad and all alone, and then Sunny meeting Basil for the first time, and the flower pots and memory to all his friends and showing the amazing times they would have together, gathered round the piano, stargazing at night, as it's just so evocative and emotional. To say this part made me cry would be an understatement. This final duet between Sunny and Mori made me cry so much whilst playing, as this part captures everything I've been analysing this whole video. The bittersweet feelings of seeing those happy memories, the reference to the water scene and seeing Mori's love and protective nature, and finally, after all of that escapism and repression, Sunny can be with his sister again, and play the duet they were never able to, and finally begin to accept the truth of everything and begin to live. In this sequence, it makes you feel that deep loss and grief for Mori, as it so beautifully captures everything that makes this game so perfect and special, and every time I watch this I can't help but cry, with this part being so special and emotionally impactful. That's the reason why I decided to talk about OMORI in this video, and everything in it has been building up to being able to capture the amazing beauty and emotional resonance of this amazing masterpiece. After this, you see Sunny standing face to face with OMORI and falls into his arms as they hug, with OMORI disappearing and Sunny finally free from the guilt he's held in his heart for so long. Sunny then approaches the door to white space as he bows and leaves. You see Sunny lying in a hospital bed asleep and bandaged up after the fight with Basil, yet upon waking up he begins to sob, like the years of repressed emotions comes out all at once, as he's able to accept and to grieve, and this is one of the few times we actually see Sunny express any emotion, as he's now accepted the truth and began to live again. Sunny then gets out of bed and leaves his room to begin wandering the halls of the hospital, as he sees the headspace versions of his friends leave him for good, as he follows the stranger towards Basil's hospital room. As Sunny then enters, Sunny stands by the door with all his friends across the room around Basil's bed, as he then says, "I have to tell you something," as the credits begin to play, and that is OMORI. However, if you water Basil's flowers throughout Headspace, you see an extra scene of Basil waking up with his something still there, yet then he sees Sunny, who smiles at him with his something disappearing, with its eye closing, symbolising the end of Sunny's guilt, as Basil smiles back with his something disappearing too, as after 4 long years of torment, guilt and grief, they are now finally free of it after so long, and can all move on together. This ending is so emotional and heartfelt, and is one that really resonated with me when I first played it, with the reflection on the good times and happy memories and the final duet being so well crafted as to make me cry. But I think to properly discuss this ending and the game's meaning as a whole, I need to talk about its impact on me. I first played OMORI a few months into going through a really rough time in my life, and its themes around escapism and nostalgia looking back on the past when things were better really resonated with me. For a long time I felt so lost, with each month being worse than the last, and I was just really depressed for most of the first half of this year, and took to escapism through making YouTube videos and also playing games like OMORI, where it helped me reflect on my own situation, and whilst things still took a long time to get better after that, and nothing really improved straight away, I do think this game played a part in me eventually getting better. Part of me has always been scared to share how my mental health has been this year, or even sharing the stuff I did in the Before Your Eyes and Spiritfarer sections out of fear, wanting to pull inward like I've done my whole life, this year especially. But it would be disingenuous to talk about all of these games without being open and vulnerable about my relationships with all of these games, as my personal circumstances made these games especially emotional to play through. I think OMORI's ending is meant to be one of hope, that no matter how bad things may seem, no matter how terrible the stuff that's happening has been, that there's always a way out no matter what, and that first step on that path to acceptance is to love yourself, to accept what's happened, confront that part of you and begin to grow from it. Another message I think OMORI wants to convey is about nostalgia and looking back on the past. In OMORI we see a life long past the days of simple happiness, where friendships have died out and memories are beginning to fade away, and the game, through the constant revisiting of the photo album, wants to make you feel Sunny's longing for those times again, with Headspace being a representation of that, as it's a world where everyone is the age they were in those happy times. There's no death, there's no lost friendships, just endless clinging on to a time now gone. But Sunny, in leaving Headspace, is not only giving up that use of escapism, but also giving up that reflection on the past. Because things will always seem better in retrospect, there will always be a happier time to look back upon, but in doing so you'll end up stuck living in the past so much you forget to live in the present. You let life pass you by, you miss opportunities to live in the now, and the only way to beat that is to move on, to accept the past and leave the comfort of that escapism and move on to a brighter future. But no matter your mental state, I still feel that this game has something to offer to everyone, being one of the most emotionally rich and evocative experiences I've had whilst playing a game, with a story and message so touching and rich that it transcends everything in order to be a deeply touching and powerful piece of art and human expression. This game reaches into the darkest corner of the human experience, pulling at your heartstrings each and every step of the way, culminating in an ending so moving and emotional that will make you cry, and is truly one of the best games I've ever played. Okay, now back to Before Your Eyes. The red light returns, with Benny using the button to ease the pain whilst eating food and taking pills, yet this entire time it doesn't make it go away entirely, implying that his condition is worsening. This happens the next day too, with this time Benny getting a call from Chloe, accusing him of faking his illness to avoid her.
Well, just so you know, I know you're faking.
and this comes off as more of her own way with dealing with a terrible situation by pretending it's not real. Anyway, after this, Benny's still in bed, still with the red light looming over, as his father talks about Benny's mother with him, reading through her sheet music.
I feared that I was losing her. But then you played this on the piano, and your little hands reaching up for the keys. She just couldn't believe how gifted you were.
And this is just so sad. A father talking to his dying son about the joy that he brought to their lives, and how he helped them through their difficulties, yet due to his illness he could be taken away. And this was the point for me where I really started tearing up playing this game, yet still nothing compared to what was about to happen. Anyway, his dad wants him to try to do something like that again.
Try closing your eyes. See if you can remember.
Wait, is that... That's my piece. How did you figure out how to play that?
Benny begins to play the piece before then.
Keep playing, B. She's listening.
His mother now in the room. Benny, even through his sickness and hooked up to IVs and machines with their sounds in the background throughout, still manages to play his mother's composition and brings back a small bit of light into such a tragic story. This part was really hard to play through. Everything about it is just so fucking sad. Having the mixed emotions of him being sick combined with the playing of piano makes for such a harrowing performance. I remember when I first played this all those years ago. Still numb, reeling from that loss, yet this moment managed to reach out to me, to reach behind all that, and for the first time since I heard the news about it, I started to tear up, and the walls were finally starting to break down. However, I didn't fully cry until later in the game, which I'll go into now. Benny's in bed again, the red light now strongly imposing at the foot of the bed, with there now being more medical equipment in the room, so you go through the same routine of eating food, taking pills and administering pain relief medicine. Until then, Benny's old cat enters and sits on the bed, with Benny's slow and pained breathing being heard in the background. The next morning this small bit of joy continues, where despite his mother's allergies she appreciates the cat being there.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just so happy she's here.
But this doesn't last for long, as then the red light is back even bigger, with Benny undergoing the same routine in order to soothe the suffering. You then overhear a conversation between Benny's parents discussing how Chloe was never told about his illness, and how she lost her mother a year ago. After this, the red light is back, this time closer than it was before, and you wonder how much longer it can be fought off for. This continues into the next scene where Chloe enters.
You do realize this is really nothing special to me. I've seen this all before.
And the Stay Here constellation appears above Benny's bed, and she begins to talk about the story and says her reaction was bad, as you continue with the constellation.
Hey! What are you looking at? Don't look up there! Look at me!
As she then wants to give Benny something.
So maybe if you close your eyes, I can give it to you and I'm gonna leave.
You then open your eyes to see a letter from her, saying that he is her best friend, and it's just so heartbreaking having this juxtaposition of suffering and light throughout. After this, there is yet another battle with the red light, getting closer to Benny with your eye movements now being slower and sluggish. He's getting worse. You close your eyes and hear Benny's mother beginning to write music again.
It feels good to play it.
It's sad.
Yeah, well, that would make sense.
And his father then says what he likes about it.
Like if the unspeakable darkness I'm carrying can be so well expressed, maybe it's not so unspeakable.
Mirroring a scene from the beginning of the game where he couldn't explain what he liked about her music. In a tragic way, the grief has brought them closer together, and while she may not be as big of a composer as she imagined herself being, her music still managed to resonate with the most important people in her life. You then go into another fight with a red light. This time he blinks, being futile to do anything, as darkness closes in on the room. This happens in the scene after too. Can't eat, can't take pills, only barely administering the medicine, as the light gets stronger and stronger, not even able to blink on the door, and then the light is now large and imposing. You can't do anything or move as you hear noises of the equipment in the background, and then
I can't breathe.
I know.
It's okay, Benny, I understand. There's no need to show me anymore.
No, Richard, it's like I can't breathe. Like there's this cramp on my chest.
I know. It's okay.
You can come back to me now.
And that is Benny's life. It's hard to put into words just how unbelievably harrowing and sorrowful this part of the game is. Benny's condition gets worse and worse throughout, and by using a first-person perspective and having you play this part out with your blinks, makes you feel that desperation and helplessness. It makes you feel that decay as his body is slowly consumed by the disease, and those brief moments of hope and light are suffocated by a mountain of despair, knowing what fate lies ahead for Benny, even being so distressing that the ferryman calls out to Benny to stop showing the memories, and seeing him die so young and so tragically is something that would make even the most stoic of people shed a tear. And for me, well, you can probably guess what happened to me whilst playing this part. But it's still not over yet. You're now back on the boat with the ferryman, and he says he wonders if he wasn't a good enough storyteller.
If I just don't have grand enough words, can't tell grand enough stories. But grand words and stories, I think they may be overrated.
He throws away the dictionary as the door opens.
I know just what to tell her.
You begin to see a beautiful landscape beyond the door, as he says the gatekeeper takes many forms to different souls, and...
But once you see her, you'll know.
He then goes to get ready, as you're now fully in this strange land with its beautiful foliage, water and sky, a tranquil paradise stretching off endlessly into the horizon, as you take it all in until... the gatekeeper appears in the form of a cat until...
Gatekeeper! Before you sits the soul of a child who died before he could grow old.
And then...
that means she's ready to hear your story.
With the metronome now not moving, symbolising that this is the end, you blink into Benny's bedroom with the cat watching from atop the typewriter.
You know, I never told you how much I loved your story.
You see his mother at the bottom of the bed, saying how imaginative it is.
And the person you wrote about is such an interesting and intense guy.
But her only issue with it was...
I didn't like him very much.
And so she wants to read to Benny something she wrote.
Which is about the Benny I've known for 11 years now.
As she begins to read out the story of his life.
Benjamin Bryn was born into an ordinary home, to an ordinary mother and father in a small town by the sea. His mother was a composer, or at least that's what she dreamed she'd be. So, when her own dreams didn't pan out, she began to dream for him. But then, when he was just 11 years old, he got sick and was forced to stay inside for an entire year. And in that year, he began to worry that he hadn't lived enough. So he made up a story of the great life he thought he wanted to live, which only made him forget the great life he already had, how he had filled a new home with light and joy and promise, how he met a girl, his neighbor, who felt all alone in the world and made her feel okay again, and how, even when he was sick, he still gave his parents hope, how he reminded them exactly who they were after they had almost forgotten. So when he knew he was going to go, he was okay. Because he'd already lived a great life, a full life. And he was everything he needed to be, just as he was.
You then blink for the last time as you see the gatekeeper and the ferryman.
She accepts.
As you're then told to close your eyes.
Why is he smiling like that?
It must be somewhere that he likes.
And that is before your eyes. To say that ending was emotional would be an understatement. After playing this, I just seriously began to cry so much. More than I had at anything before. More than any other game or movie or other piece of media. As I just cried and cried because it was just so sad. Before Your Eyes is a really touching game. One that truly uses the medium of being a video game to its fullest potential. To make a really heartfelt experience. This game is a labour of love. The ending to the game is so heartbreaking, as you finally understand the full point of the game, and what it symbolises. This whole game has been a young boy trying to come to terms with his own death, not accepting that he'll die young, and wanting to imagine he'd do something more, with the ferryman representing Benny writing those stories. I think the gatekeeper is meant to represent Benny's mother, as she wants to hear the true story of Benny, not a lie or some fanciful tale. She wants to appreciate her son for who he is, not who he could have been. and it's just so heartbreaking that the final scene where she tells him he's enough, and it's only after that that Benny can move on and accept his own death. Now for me to fully explain this game's meaning, we first also need to talk about the themes seen throughout the game, and how it makes the game way more emotionally impactful, with the first one being about art and legacy, with the scene that encapsulates this the most being the metronome scene. You see the metronome with Benny's mother saying it's to keep track of time so you don't get lost in the music, potentially linking back to the wolf's dialogue about not wanting to get lost looking back on all his memories. She then talks about her father, saying that he said,
"The only way to fight against time is to create a work of genius, which might live on after you're gone."
So she asked him if she was a work of genius, and
He said, "Yes, I suppose."
and that if she made a work of genius herself, it would serve the same purpose. Now this idea directly contrasts that of Benny's mother at the end of the game, and we see this idea change and develop whilst Benny is sick, as we see throughout his childhood her striving to create that work of genius. Same with Benny and his artistic pursuits and his ideal life. Yet upon Benny getting sick, that's when she realises that there's another way to fight against time, and that's through your connection with other people. Not that art doesn't have its place in someone's legacy or importance, but even regardless of that, Benny made a difference in the lives of so many, and this character arc of Benny's mother throughout the whole game really adds to the sadness of this game, as it takes her son getting sick to realise it. And this scene is referenced multiple times throughout the game, as we hear at the funeral Benny's father describing him as
Her magnum opus, so to speak.
And so we can again see this idea linking back to that scene, and it also shows he has the mindset of their grandfather, as he says if he had a child who made a work of genius, it would make that child his magnum opus, with Benny making works of genius through his art. We also see the metronome in this scene, again reinforcing the theme of time, and the narrative around art, and suggesting that she might not have been able to fight against time, since the metronome keeps ticking. But this game still conveys that art still has its place and legacy in invoking emotions and bringing light to people, which we see through the theme of music throughout, which technically is similar to the theme of art, with you learning about Benny's mother's passion for composing music throughout his childhood, with a lot of the scenes involving her having music or the piano in it in some form. But we also see how her aspirations are crushed and her peace is rejected, how she downplays her achievements in front of her colleagues, and how there's a sense of pain in her as she feels she hasn't accomplished her dreams. And Benny knows this too, and that's why we see in the art gallery at the end that after her death she becomes known globally for her amazing compositions. But it's also her music that finally inspires Benny to create his magnum opus, and through his art it does this.
It's unbelievable, Benny. It's like she's standing in the room with us.
Conveying the power that art has in dealing with grief, and helping bring light to people. And in the real story we see this too, with Benny's father saying about how touching Benny's mother's newest piece is.
Like if the unspeakable darkness I'm carrying can be so well expressed, maybe it's not so unspeakable.
Suggesting that this song helps capture the grief they're going through with slowly losing Benny, and through art they begin to bond again, and process this terrible situation. Then also when Benny is sick and slowly dying with his mother and father being so heartbroken and sad, it's through Benny playing the piano and playing his mother's compositions, that for just a brief moment it brings back light and joy back to all of them, as their feelings are expressed through art. The theme of music is something so essential to the game that a year before it released it was going to be named coda, a term in music referring to the passage of music that brings a piece to an end, which links to the core idea of the game around music and the end of life, with the metronome scene throughout being another example of this, representing the constant march of time, the idea that you're always approaching your death. Time always moves forward and the only way to beat it is to make a work of genius or become that work of genius by giving light to others. Overall though, this game deals with numerous themes, with one of the biggest ones being about legacy and feeling like you haven't lived enough. We see this through her grandfather talking about living on through art, with art being a form of legacy, and how his mother desperately wants to be recognised for her compositions, and through how Benny wants to be known as an artist living his life to the fullest. But Before Your Eyes challenges this notion. You don't have to make a world-renowned piece of art to be missed. You don't have to make a great song to have a legacy. Instead, it's through the people you gave light to when you were alive that you live on through, and that's who his mother wanted to remember. Not the Benny that would have excelled as an artist or musician, but the Benny that gave them hope in their darkest hour, and filled their lives with light when they needed it most. I think the developers specifically chose to get across this idea too, as in the original version of the game Close Your, it would cover a person's whole life, from growing up to having a family and a job, and eventually dying at an old age. But I think not only is the path they took in the final game way more heartbreaking and touching than the first idea, due to living a life cut short by a deadly disease, but also because it sends a different message, that you are enough. No matter how short you live, or even when it feels like you can't do or make anything, you'll still have an impact that lives on far beyond you. But they also show that art has a place. True human art has the power to bring light to you in your darkest moments, to give you that hope and make you feel less alone. With this game itself being an incredible example of that, as it is a truly incredible piece of art that touched me and helped me with my grief. and I don't think I can talk about how this game made me cry without talking about the level of impact it had on me. This game will always be special to me because the first time I played it was on the same day that one of my family members died. When we found out the news that morning, I didn't cry, which I found strange since we knew this death was coming for a while, you know, cancer's a bitch and all. And I had cried plenty before that, yet when it happened it felt strange that I didn't cry, even though I wanted to. However, later on that day in the whirlwind of emotions, I found myself alone at home, playing this game, and through the story and messages around looking back on a life well lived, and focusing around death with a heartbreaking ending, I was then finally able to cry, and a huge wave of relief was lifted off my shoulders as I sat there watching the credits bawling my eyes out, as this game had finally let me express those emotions and begin to grieve. However, after that I still wasn't able to cry much after, and it felt like those emotions had been suspended and tied to that game. Life moved on and so did I, as while it was still bad experiencing loss, over many years the grief began to fade and I thought I was over it. That was until I replayed Before Your Eyes to make this video. Going into it I didn't expect to cry much, and to be honest I've forgotten basically all of it from when I first played it, so it was still a fresh and novel experience. However, then the literal moment the game started properly, I instantly began to cry. It was like all the emotions I had left there years and years ago had suddenly started flooding back, and as I played more and more I got even more emotional, more than I did when I first played through it, and by the end of the game I was crying more than I had at any other game. And as I watched the ending, the memories of that family member began flooding back, and I began to cry even more, remembering memories that I hadn't thought of in years, making me cry so much. Even more than the first time I played it, even more than any time I've cried at a piece of media, as years and years worth of emotions flowed out of me, as once again I was finally able to cry. And that speaks to the power of this game. The fact that this game could have such a profound and strong effect that it brought back those memories and made me feel things so powerfully that I began to cry, acts as a testament to the power of this game. And honestly, while the other games I've discussed here are probably on par to this game in terms of sadness, storytelling and emotion, for me personally this game is the one that I've cried the most at. So what is so unique about all these games that they all manage to make me cry? Well, I think they all benefit from being a video game, and are stories that can only be told in that medium. You get to directly interact with all the spirits in Spiritfarer, you play through all the plot revelations in OMORI, and it's your eyes that dictate the flow of time and Before Your Eyes. All of it places you at the centre of the emotions, whilst these games all have their own protagonists with their own stories. In a way, whilst playing you become that character. Sure, it's Stella who holds bonds with the characters in the world of the game, but because you play as her, you're the one who's building those bonds. You might not be Benny, but you still see everything from his perspective. You make those choices and you take the role of being him. And this is something that is unique to the medium of video games, because no other medium can place you at the centre of the narrative, with you directly interacting with it and taking the role of the protagonist, and being able to live their life and feel those emotions stronger than if you were just watching it. All three of these games use the medium of being a video game to tell its story, and create emotions more effectively. In OMORI, you spend hours and hours piecing together parts of the story, until the end where you find the truth of Mori's death, making the emotional payoff of the final duet hit much harder, because you feel attached to this story due to playing as Sunny. After hours and hours you finally reach the release of the truth, after everything you've been through, and in a way this makes you in the same mindset as Sunny, as after all of the hardship you're rewarded with the truth and the release of emotions in the form of the final duet. In Spiritfarer you choose how to bond with the spirits and are tasked with the daily upkeep of them, and at the end it's your choice to release them to the Everdoor or not, making it way more impactful than just passively watching it happen. And in Before Your Eyes you decide how the story goes. You decide the choices made in life, and you become part of the story as your eyes dictate when to skip through memories, and makes you far more aware and present in every part of the game. But there's something deeper than just gameplay mechanics that has made these games so impactful for me to play, especially replaying them for this video over the summer. And I guess now it's time for me to talk about the effect of these games on me specifically, due to my personal circumstances that I've referenced a few times throughout this video. This year hasn't been great for me, if you couldn't tell from the videos I've made, but I was really depressed this year. For a while I didn't know what to do, and I was really miserable, but by looking back over these games, and reconnecting with who I used to be after feeling like I had lost who I was, I began to realise more things about myself, and about life as a whole, and managed to confront things I was never able to. And so if you'll indulge me for just a few more minutes, I'd like to give you the best conclusion I can for this video. Before Your Eyes quite literally changed my life. After replaying that game, I cried so hard for the first time in literally years, after I thought I wasn't able to, and the morning after things were so different from the second I woke up. I began to remember so many more memories of that family member that passed away, and began to think about them in a way I hadn't in years. I also became way more appreciative of my family and those around me. After playing both Spiritfarer and Before Your Eyes, it made me realise that the people around you aren't here forever, and up until now I'd taken them for granted. In the difficulties I had earlier in the year, I cut myself off from those around me, and sadly I let relationships wither that shouldn't. So after those games I began to live again. I reconnected with those I hadn't spoken to in a while, and didn't take them for granted while savouring every single moment. That's the power of these games. All my life I've wanted a simple fix, a dream that I'd wake up from and suddenly everything would be in perspective, or play a game or watch a movie that would change me so much that by the end of it I would return a changed person. But that never really happened, until now. Because these games hold such power and messages about life as a whole. I know a lot of what I'm saying you're probably thinking, yeah, no shit, but it's deeper than that. I guess in a way both of these games try to tackle what it means to be alive, because at its core these games tell us that the people you're with and the art you make is what lives on past yourself. And whilst things may be really bad for you now, and you may feel like you're alone and things won't get better, there's people out there waiting for you, and there's so much happiness that you can receive. All you have to do is keep going. So go out there, create art, shine your soul as a reflection of yourself on whatever you create. Because what else are we good for? There's a real beauty in true human-made art, due to the fact that you, shaped by your experiences in your life so far, are unique to you, and you take that and express it through your art. And maybe, just maybe, your art will reach out to someone and touch them too, just as you've been touched before by the art you were inspired by. And we can see this in Spiritfarer, the game itself, being proof of that, and then Before Your Eyes with both music and painting as art forms being discussed a heavy amount, and how Benny cared so deeply for his mother's compositions to be realised that he wrote it so that she would be appreciated for it. And then in OMORI, the only way Sunny can reconnect with Mari and let go to reach acceptance is through the art of music in the form of one final duet. These games all live beyond their creators, fighting against the flow of time, and will go on to inspire so many to come, and has touched the lives of many. And from my experience, I've never felt more alive than when I've been making something, whether that's a video or a game or music or writing. It's those moments where I'm deep into making and improving something that I truly feel alive. But all of these games leave you with a lingering question, one that goes far beyond the end of the game, and that is, what will you leave behind? And from what I've learned from this video, that's really up to you.
Flowing through the seas of time, memories that were left behind bring us closer to the end of this journey where we grew as friends. Take me through the mist and storms in waters that are still unknown. Under guiding starlit sky we will learn how to say goodbye. And I'll take your hand and guide you through all the steps one takes to move on to a place, a world unseen to us all. But it's okay, we'll be together.
I don't know the next time I'll cry, or if I'll ever cry again, but it was nice that through these games I was able to break down that barrier and be able to cry again, to be able to reconnect and be able to remember those I've lost, to be granted a new perspective and see things differently, and stop taking people or things for granted. I'll always appreciate that because of these games. If the horror of escapism was me at my lowest, then this is me coming up again from that, starting to live again, starting to connect again, and maybe, just maybe, I might even cry again. Thanks for watching. Okay, that was a cool ending and all, but I've got a couple more things to say. First of all, the fact you've made it to this point means I've either enjoyed it enough to stick around, or you've just left me on the background. Either way though, I think you could help me out. Basically, there's apparently this new YouTube feature called Hype, which apparently can help out smaller creators by boosting the videos which has more hype. And so if you could you please try and hype this video? I don't know much about it, so I don't actually know how you would do that, but I'm curious to see what happens with it. I think it might be by the like button, like below the video. Just check, please, it would help me out so much. I've spent 5 months on this video, please. Also, huge thank you to Dark Old Rotzi for once again doing most of the pixel art stuff you see in these videos. Huge thanks to her, and go check out the project she's doing. I first had the idea for this video and wrote the intro for it over 7 months ago, so you could say this video has taken 7 months to make. In reality, it's more like 5 months of dedicated work. This video is probably the most open one I'll ever make, and after making my last super long video, I was scared I would never be able to do anything as good as it ever again. Just like this video, it took a lot out of me both emotionally and creatively, but I think this video is a step up compared to that, and I really hope you've enjoyed it. And if you want to see that other video, which is very similar to this, where I also analyse OMORI in greater depth than I did here, then click here to watch the horror of escapism, or click here to watch one of my videos YouTube thinks you'll love the most. Anyway, thanks for watching.